Hello one, hello all. Thibert here. Welcome to Hack Shack Studios. We're going to be hanging out. We're going to be talking some crazy talk. Yes, actually it was kind of more clickbaity. I guess there's a lot of wacky stuff going on right now in Comicsgate and things, and we can talk about those. But I mainly was throwing that up as a fun clickbait idea. But if you guys want to talk about it, that's cool. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. And what I'm mainly going to be doing is I'm going to be working on this. So I'm going to be working on this today. I started inking it last night, and I'm hoping to get pretty far along today, if not finish it by day's end. That's kind of the plan. So actually we have Gaming or What. He's in the lead, the first in the chat. No award, no present, but congratulations, man. I appreciate it. We have Gaming or What TM. Hail Studio 7.62. Thank you. Hail Art pre-drag. Miss Kovic. Okay. And then we have Mark. Hey, what's up, Mark? It's good to see you here. We have Billy Glasby. What's up, man? And I have the window open, you guys. It's a really beautiful day here in SoCal. So I have a nice breeze coming in the window. So it might be a little noisy. And I do have fans blowing, so I hope that's not too annoying. If the fans become annoying, just let me know, and I will turn them off. But I do understand that sometimes they become annoying. It's weird because sometimes people can't hear them, sometimes people can. And also, I'm going to show off some stuff. Chrono Mechanics is coming together, you guys. We are looking good for wrapping everything up this week and getting it out to the printer. So we're just waiting for a couple of pages from Jeff Eckelberry, the letterer. And we have a couple tweaks on the credits page and the back cover. I do have the credits page here. I'm going to show you guys in a bit. So I'm going to show off some Chrono Mechanics stuff. And the trading cards are coming along. We have James Dean Anderson working on those. So it's looking really cool, you guys. The Chrono stuff is coming together. And I'm so excited about getting this thing to print, which is right around the corner. It is going to have, I would say by Wednesday, Thursday, latest, we should have this out to the printer. We should have the files out. So that is really cool. These are long, epic journeys. And when they get to this point, it's kind of a mixed, you're kind of like, you have mixed feelings like, oh, I got to let it go now and I got to move on. But then the other side is like, well, we're going to get a comic book out of this soon. So you don't want to see it leave your hands as a creative person because you want to keep tweaking on it forever and keep fixing it and making it better. But at some point, you got to let your babies go and get out in the real world, get printed up and make some cool comics. And that's what I'm going to do soon. So Pamela's downstairs right now working with Jeff Eckelberry on the final lettering tweaks and stuff and balloon layouts. It's funny because when you get things back from your letterer, you realize sometimes the balloon placements that you put down aren't quite reading right. And so I like working with Jeff because he's never really too uptight about corrections or making it better. I mean, if anything, he really wants to make it look better. So I never get opposition or any kind of crap with him. We just do it, no problem, and then move on, which I do like. The creative process, I tell everybody, the creative process isn't a linear one. So it really is a matter of like getting something, then plussing it, sending it back, that person plussing it, and back and forth until you kind of get it into a place where it looks the best that it can with the timeline that you have, the time frame, I should say, that you have. So that's kind of where we're at on that. And Jeff is really cool about that stuff. So we have Shadowhawk in the chat. Hail RT Bear and Mama Bear. She's downstairs kicking some butt. Gaming or what? Will that be for sale? Would like to buy it. Oh, the piece I'm working on right here, the black and white. Yes, this is for the Second Chance campaign, which is we have the pre-launch page up right now. There is a link in the description, so if you want to click on that, sign up. You will be you will get a free trading card with every backing. So if you back the book, you will get a free trading card, but you have to sign up first. So that's the catch. And also, we are going to have some early bird specials. So the early signer-uppers will get a notification before we go live. So you will have the first, I guess you will get the first eyes on it. So you can make sure you get any of those specials before they sell out. Yoko Anna. Hello. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That's perfect, man. I borrow ideas. Hail Art, what's up, man? So yeah, gaming. I'm sure that this will be up on the campaign, so we'll be selling this as well. So I hope I answered your question. Studio 7.62 says looking good. Hey, we have Charlie's London in official. It's official. How you doing? And love right back at you. David Dell, what's up, man? Close. Close enough with the name. I'm sorry if I screwed it up. Congratulations on your comic coming along, Charlie. Oh, cool. Yeah, they have a comic as well. That's a sick piece. Thanks, man. Thank you. We have CG Oracle. What's up? Hey, there's Zachary. Oh my gosh. Take all my money. Take all my money. Okay, I will. Oh, okay. Cool. Pamela just handed me a note, and I just might take her up on it. We'll get this party crazy at some point. All right. Yes, James. We are on. Oh, he's on the cards. He's working on the cards right now. Yeah, I have one of them I want to show off. We have Albino Thunderbuns. Happy Memorial Day, Americans. Happy Monday, Tuesday, everyone else. Yes, you beat me to it, my friend. So yeah, happy Memorial Day. Let's remember all of the people that fought for our freedom. Definitely love the composition. Thank you, my friend. Well, I am going to get some people in here. So let's see if I can do this without screwing everything up. All right. And I got to go somewhere else for the next one. Yeah. You guys talk amongst yourselves. All right. I think I took care of business. Yeah. So like I said, we can get this party crazy. Man, I got a little bit of a scratchy throat. I don't know why. Yeah, the weather's changing a little bit. Man, the weather in California has been so phenomenal. It's amazing. I'm so thankful. As soon as I start thinking about leaving the state and moving somewhere else, California starts playing nice with me. Hail our fallen military. Yes, yes. Thank you, Cam. Definitely. My dad fought in the Korean War. I guess they reduced that to a police action, but tell that to my dad. It felt like a war. The line art looks good. Thank you, man. Thank you. Wait. That's not the one I wanted. I bet Vinny will go in. Vinny will go in. Vinny will go in where? Vinny's always going in things. All right, I'm going to read this one real quick. This image is making me think hard about picking up black and white. Signed up for the email list. Oh, well, thank you so much. And that's the plan, man, to make it so good that it's undeniable that you have to get the book. So, hey, Joe, what's up?
Just another sunny, very, very high cost of living day in Southern California.
Yeah, but the weather, holy crap, man. I'm looking out at the mountains right here. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, we're going to go over to my in-laws a little later in the day and do a barbecue, but for now it's pretty chill.
Yeah, I took my wife out to lunch. That's as much as we're going to get into it. I kind of like working. So my daughter went to a barbecue with her boyfriend's family. We usually do barbecues, but this year, it felt good to just kind of lay low. And also, I don't know how my friends feel about, getting together right now with all this crazy, coronavirus crap.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we've got a bunch of people in the neighborhood who are following all of the guidelines and whatnot from the county board of health and the state guidelines, and then we have other people in the neighborhood who are just doing whatever they feel like. So it's kind of hard on the kids when they see some kids that they see them out doing whatever they want and they want to go join in, but they can't.
Yeah. I had this, oh my gosh, I forget the religion, but they couldn't celebrate Christmas and things like that. And so I just remember always, on Christmas Day, all the kids go out in the neighborhood and start, showing off their toys and everything that they got from Santa. And I remember once looking out at the window and seeing those little girls just looking out the window like, why can't we go out and play? And even as a kid, I was like, that seems really like a horrible thing to do. But sometimes, because of your belief or because of the law, you have to, do certain things. That's the tough part about being a parent.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where we have, so some kids in the neighborhood, their parents have been really strict because they've got high risk family members around.
Yeah.
And that was us too. And fortunately, we're no longer in that situation. But for the first month, we were very strict about everything. And then we've been able to ease up somewhat. But at the same time, we've always tried to teach our kids how to, get along following rules that they may not like, but figuring out that you may not like the rule, but you'll like it a lot less if you get in trouble for not following it.
Yeah, or that the reason you're doing it is for the greater good. It's not so much that you're going to get put in jail or anything like that, but it's kind of good to look out for your fellow man, in this kind of situation. And as much as you might want to do certain things, you got to think about the other guy right now. I wonder, I just wonder, I had this observation the other day, those anti-vaxxers, I wonder how they feel about this pandemic because, the shoe's on the other foot now. So it'd be interesting to see if they're like, man, I have to wear my masks and you guys aren't wearing your mask. You guys suck. And it's like, yeah, well, welcome to the game. You guys were the ones that were set against getting vaccinations and possibly infecting, other people. And now, the shoe's on the other foot and you don't like it.
Yeah. Charlie's London said she needs Britain to start opening up or she won't be able to get married in November.
Oh, well, in advance, congratulations. I guess at the very least on the engagement. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're starting to finally, I don't know how it is in your county, Art, but in mine, we're starting to see, I think, more of a reasonable effort to try to get life going somewhat back to normal. There are more people who are going back to work, and offices and other businesses are reopening with modified practices, as far as sanitation and all of that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Gavin Newsom, I think, is the biggest nuisance in California right now. Because I know that I think Rob Liefeld posted the Newport Beach mayor was saying that he's kind of questioning Gavin Newsom right now and saying that we need to start. We kind of did flatten the curve, and that's what this was all about, flattening the curve. So that's been done. So at this point, now we have to figure out how to get people back to work. We don't have to keep preaching, the scare tactic about keeping everybody safe, because at some point, the infection or whatever, it does have to go through the population. You either has to be, some of that has to happen. So we flatten the curve. So now we've kind of maintained, you know what I mean? So we're not going to have like this huge pandemic and stuff. So mission accomplished, you know what I mean? Like when you look at the statistics in Southern California, they're pretty good. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
We did it. So at this point, let's just pat ourselves on the back and go, okay, that's fine. Let's not let our guard down, but now let's focus on getting back to work and being as safe as possible in doing so. But it seems really like that Gavin Newsom doesn't want that at all. Like he wants to keep the same narrative going. And then, he's just kind of saying, this paranoia, like we can't let up, we can't stop. We can't do this because, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Joe, but wasn't the president saying, let's open churches back up? And then Gavin Newsom recently is saying, not in Southern California. Is that true? Have you heard that?
That I have not heard yet. I briefly saw a blurb about Trump declaring churches and places of worship as essential and that they should be reopened, but I haven't heard or seen anything from Newsom on it.
Well, if that indeed is true, then shame on that guy, because Targets are open and hardware stores are open, and you know what? You can't really reduce somebody's belief and their spiritual, needs and just say they're not essential. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty insensitive on its own. So if we can go get a 2x4 at the hardware store and that's essential, then I think people should be able to go to a place of worship, be responsible, but go to a place of worship and, do their thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of questions from the chat.
Okay.
One is from Buffalo Con. He wanted to know if there's a way to add on the sketchbook to his order.
Oh, the work in progress sketchbook. I think you could just order the sketchbook. Yeah, just order it. And what Pamela does is when she puts things together, she does look for the same names. So most likely they'll still come in the same package. Let me see, because if we do it that way, then you're gonna get hit with that shipping.
Right.
Damn it! How else could we do it? You can possibly. Well, let me ask you in the chat, what did you order first? Because we do have some combinations. So if you just ordered the book, what you possibly could do is cancel the order that you have and then reorder with the book and the work in progress sketchbook.
And I should probably also ask Buffalo Con just to make sure we're talking about Chrono mechanics, right? Not your black and white second chance campaign.
Yeah, that's the only sketchbook that I know that I have right now is the work in progress Chrono one. So I would
Okay,
assume,
cool. That makes it easy.
yeah, I would assume it's that one. But it's good. It's good to clarify. But yeah, if he ordered a book but wants to add on the work in progress, what you can do is you can cancel that order and then reorder the book and the work in progress. If not, I'm not really sure how you could do that um, without getting hit for the shipping price twice. I mean, possibly what we could do is PayPal you the shipping price back, but that gets a little complicated.
Jam Creates has a question. He says he's inking his first pages for a contest right now and wants to know if you have any advice for him.
I think my biggest advice is when you're inking, think about foreground, background, and midground. So each one of those elements should have their own line weights. And the reason I say that is, like, let's say your thickest line weight is your foreground elements. Well, then your thinnest is your background elements. So if that's the case, then everything that's on those planes will stand out because of the line weights. So the thicker one will be more prominent and dominant than the thin line. So then you keep the thick lines in the foreground, your thinnest in the background. And by prioritizing your line weights, you're prioritizing the way people are going to look at your artwork and see your artwork. And so inking is kind of like when you draw, but also when you ink, you're kind of prioritizing where the reader looks. So if you can make your foreground elements thicker and your background elements thinner, then that's better. So I don't know if you can tell. It's very, very subtle, but like this robot here has pretty thick lines.
Mm-hmm.
And then this robot back here has thinner lines.
Yep.
So then the medium, like her, she's a little bit in between those two. And then these figures back here, these really little robots, those are going to be even thinner than this one. And then these ones back here are going to be like really, really thin. There's not going to be a lot of line weight on them at all. So there's that. And then the other thing is when you have two lines intersect, you know what? I'm going to put this, I'm sorry, Joe, but I'm going to do it this way. When you have two lines intersect, always prioritize one over the other. So usually the one in the foreground would be thicker, but it doesn't always follow that rule because sometimes within a figure, you'll have lines that overlap. So you never, let me see if I can draw this for you. So you never want the two lines that are overlapping to be the same weight. So if you have two lines that are overlapping, it looks like that. So I don't know if you can see that. Okay. But if you have one line that's this line weight, and then you have one line that's this line weight, you can see how one stands out from the other.
Yep.
So whenever you have two lines intersecting, never have them the same line weight. That goes for everything because it'll always look more dynamic. If you have two lines that intersect that are the same line weight, then it starts to look flat and boring, and that's what you don't want. So I think those, just not seeing the artwork or not seeing where your talent is, I'd say that overall is probably the best advice, just as far as just overall advice.
That sounds great. I mean, from what I've studied in comic book art and inking specifically, I would have to say that as somebody who used to oh yeah, Jam Create says awesome. Thanks for the tips, Art.
Oh, no problem, man. My pleasure.
Yeah, I was just going to say that your advice about foreground, midground, and background and the respective line weights is pretty much the first thing that I hope every aspiring inker would learn. I think that's the first thing I learned when I was trying to learn it. And in your other tip about the crossing or intersecting lines, I hadn't heard that before, but it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, it might just be a me thing. I don't know. I mean, sometimes, you do it so often, you do it so much that you just pick things up. And so I don't know if I picked that up in a book or if I just started realizing that as, the more you do it, you start figuring out that you can make things look more interesting if you don't have the same line weights cross.
Mighty Joe Young said he wants to thank you. He received the autograph on Saturday along with a print, and he really appreciates it.
Oh, cool. I'm glad. Yeah, that was no problem. Sorry it took so long. I had it in the office here, and my wife and I kind of have this outbox thing where things that go to the post office belong. And for some reason, that just never got in there. So I apologize. Yeah, so I labeled this crazy talk. So have you been hearing, Joe, about some of the Comicsgate stuff and things like that? Do you have a take on any of that? I think Ethan covered a little bit of it a few minutes ago, actually.
Yeah, I listened to most of the live stream last night that Ethan did on his channel, where he brought in John Malin, Cecil, Mickey McCheese, and they were going over a video that Praetorian had posted, and Mecca McCheese was posting on his channel, which if anybody wants from the chat wants to watch it, I believe his channel name is called Jalapeno Milk. So anyway, they were going through that video, and there was kind of a dissection of that, and then things got a bit heated, and Ethan ended the live stream early and pretty abruptly. And then earlier today, he did a solo live stream, and he said that he was not going to be bringing other people onto his channel for live streams for a bit, and he's going to be still streaming solo, kind of going back to what he used to do in the earlier days of his channel, where all of his live streams were solo. Does that about cover what you were thinking of?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're was it kind of Cecil and John were thinking it was kind of over, was it War Campaign?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I think that it's more or less a conflict of a few people with a few other people. And I think if I understood Ethan's line of reasoning, if I remember correctly, he said a couple of times that some of his friends have a real problem with some of his other friends, and he's not going to choose between them. So the best approach he can see at this point is to go solo, and hopefully those guys will work out their problems off of his channel. And then he'll kind of see how things go. That's more or less what I took from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty good approach. I mean, I've for the time, let's see, I'm trying to think when I started on Twitter. I believe it was either March or April of 2019. And from the very beginning, my whole reason for being there was simply to try and get to know people and establish a professional network so that when I launch my publishing company, I will have, a network in place more or less, and hopefully we'll have met a bunch of people that would be interested in buying my books, and I can interact with them directly and not have a third person handling PR or anything like that for my company. So I wanted to start it off from the very beginning in that way. And so I very specifically made a decision to not engage in any Twitter feuds via social media. And I say Twitter feuds because I started on Twitter, but as I branch off into other social media platforms, which I've been looking at lately, trying to decide what to do and how much, I'm just gonna take the same approach. I'm I'm gonna stay out of the feuds, and I'll try to meet people and that I think are interested in the stuff that I have to offer, or I'm interested in the stuff they have to offer when it comes to creative work. But I don't have the time or the interest to get involved in everything else, and occasionally I'll wander down some um, Twitter rabbit hole or a series of YouTube videos where people are answering each other back and forth, and it's just simply trying to get an understanding of where things are in terms of the landscape. It's not because I have any intention of, you know, grabbing a particular set of pom-poms and cheerleading for that side or not. I think if I was a young guy, single guy, I'd probably be tempted to get involved in that stuff. I do like competition quite a bit. I played competitive sports for many years, and I'm still a fan of competitive sports. And I do think that competition is a good thing, but a lot of what happens on social media has nothing to do with friendly competition or healthy competition where the bantering is all in good fun and it really spurs each other to get inspired by each other's work and to, kind of like in the early Image days where there was both healthy competition and unhealthy competition at times, but for the most part a lot of it was guys who were in, I'll just use two of the studios for example. Let's say you at Extreme were seeing stuff that was coming out of Wildstorm that looked really cool, and so whatever you were working on, you wanted to outdo the coolness factor, and then you would put out a book, and then the guys from Wildstorm would see what you did, and then they would get inspired and say, "Oh, well, we got to outdo what Thibert's doing." And but you weren't out trying to cause any harm. You were simply,
It's not personal. It's not a
yeah,
personal attack. It's like trying to compete in a fair level, playing field. And you're competing against each other in commerce. You're competing against each other for, the reader, attention. And then that becomes kind of a win-win scenario. So it's no harm, no foul, right? As long as it's like you said, a competition. As long as you play by those rules, then everything is above board and it's all okay. Because then it does become a win-win. Just like a sporting event, you get to see a great game, and if your team wins, then that's a plus. If not, you saw a great game.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
It's no harm, no foul. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Uh, I was just wondering because the thing is, the only reason that I'm even a little bit concerned with it. I mean, we can all do what we want to do. Obviously, no one needs permission. Ethan doesn't need permission from me or from anybody else. What he does with his channel or with his career, and you know, that's the way it should be. And I understand that. I always have. My problem is that I do remember when we launched Chrono, that there was a little bit of influx within Comicsgate. You know, this was the height of the Mike Miller thing, and you know, not fulfilling certain people, not fulfilling campaigns and stuff like that. And you know, when we launched Chrono, we got caught like right in the middle of all of that kind of energy. And I do believe that it hurt our business, because I think that it became, for some people, you know, that were reading and following along with Comicsgate, they felt like that they were being forced to decide, you know, who they're going to, you know, back, who they're going to like, and who they're going to dislike. And it just felt like there was too much of that going on, where people were being forced to decide. You know what I mean? Like, are you on this side or are you on that side? And if you're on this side, then you're whatever. And if you're on this other side, then you're, you know, like whatever name, whatever category, you know, people want to put you into. And I just think that Chrono got caught right in all of that energy. And what was happening is it was like, oh, well, whose camp are you in? Are you anti-Miller, or you know, pro Comicsgate? You know, what are you? And so I think what did happen is it turned just a lot of people off in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, where a lot of people were just like, I don't really want to be in this position where I have to decide. You know, it would be like going and just want to see a good sports, you know, match. You know, you just wanted to see a good boxing match, but you didn't really have any skin in the game. You just wanted to see a good sporting event. You know,
Yep.
and there are people that do, like, they just like to watch baseball. They don't, you know what I mean? They don't have a team. They just like to watch a good baseball game or football, you know, or whatever it is. And so I think that kind of, that maybe was going on at that point. And so Chrono got caught into that energy. And I'm just kind of hoping that this same energy isn't happening again, because what was happening here, and I thought it was pretty amazing, is that, you know, when, and by the way, you guys, go back Dan Frigga's book right now, because he's hours away from the campaign ending. So that's Pineapple Perception, that's Black Flag. Dan's a good guy. But like, Dan launched, and there was goodwill, right? It, like, the energy felt awesome. And then Eric Weathers, you know, launched, and there was good vibes going on. And so I think people were getting caught up in that. And then even like Chrono numbers were going up and things like that. So I would like to hope that we can keep that same energy going, that it doesn't go back into, you know what I mean, that type of situation. I might be making a mountain out of a molehill right now, but that's just my thoughts on it.
Well, I think it's a legitimate concern. I mean, you described a real precedent that we all lived through, but I think a big difference that we have today that we didn't have back then is that there are a lot more people now with their own YouTube channels. Like Charlie's London, who was in the chat, was asking if she could get a shout out for her channel. So I'm gonna put that in the chat. And BoogieBot Comics as well. And there's so many channels now where they're at a smaller stage in terms of subscribers, but the number of choices is so much greater now than what there was before. So, there was a time where I was watching every live stream, every video that had anything to do with Comicsgate, and it was possible. But at some point in 2019, it became impossible because there was just too much. There's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
And in 2020, man, even if you were single and stayed home all the time and did nothing but watch CG videos and live streams, I don't think you could do it all in 24 hours. So I think that we're going to see a lot of smaller channels continue to grow, regardless of what happens with what Ethan does on his channel, whether he just takes a break for a while from having people on and then goes back to it, or if he stays solo for the long term, whatever that is, whatever he does, I still think that other channels are going to continue to grow, and people will, find the content that they prefer, and they'll stick with it for as long as it's, stuff that they like. And I think we will, at least for the foreseeable future, we'll always have multiple options that we enjoy that we can go to, and we're not quote unquote stuck with watching something that we're not really entertained by or interested in, but some relevant CG information might be discussed. So we want to make sure that we stay on top of that because we have an upcoming project and we're planning and blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think what you're saying in a nutshell is there's more diversification now, so we're less reliant, on one source, which is kind of what the goal was to begin with.
Right.
Like Malin was one of the great, he had some great lines early on about grabbing an ore, so everybody has to contribute, and we shouldn't rely on just one source of whatever, because it's a little too much, pressure on one person or one outlet. And, it's kind of like, if you think about what's happening right now in comics with the distributors and stuff like that, it's like putting eggs all in one basket, and then expecting that basket to always stay relevant, or serve everybody. And I think those things do for a while. They serve a purpose for a while, but then somebody else has to grab an ore. Somebody else has to build something to contribute that rivals it or equals it, and that's kind of the goal, and it should be the goal. And I think that's why I thought Dan was good energy for Comicsgate. He has a good energy. He understands this stuff. How to, I guess, for lack of a better term, like he knows how to play the game. How to entertain, how to, he knows how all this stuff works. And I keep thinking when I started in Comicsgate, I think there was a lot of apprehension on my part because I didn't really know how viable it was at the beginning. So I think there was a little bit of holding back, and being a little skeptical, but at the same time, still being supportive. I was never anti, but, just kind of just seeing, and just being very, like careful, I guess, cautious. And now I understand it better. I would actually, I don't have a problem saying anything, or defending any of this. I do understand clearly the sides, and if there are people that are going to hate me just based, like friends that have known me forever and are going to hate me just because of an affiliation or a political viewpoint or something like that, then ultimately I can't do anything about that. That's a decision they make, and I can't control that. And if they're going to do that, then I guess it's best to know, who your real friends are and who are your fair weather friends, kind of thing. And so, in a way, it's kind of like figuring out who your real friends are and who aren't.
Yeah, I took the same approach as you did, Art. Um, I started observing Comicsgate closely in January of 2018 because it was through Ethan's channel at the end of 2017 that I found Diversity in Comics, and the recommends list just off of his channel alone pretty much introduced me to Comicsgate. And so for the first, several months, I was watching everything, and I knew immediately in that January that the values that were being espoused by Comicsgate people, I agreed with wholeheartedly, and those had been my values for as long as I had been reading comic books, which is since the 80s. I just wanted a good story, I wanted escapist entertainment with characters and stories that were interesting and seemed like that they mattered, and I'd want to keep coming back every week. So early on in 2018, I was thinking, okay, this is definitely the crowd that I fit in with here. But there's so much going on. Before I pipe up and say anything, I'm just gonna more or less watch and listen and see what's going on, because it seems like there's a lot more here than I could really absorb in a week or so. And I'm glad I took that approach, because there really was a lot of moving parts, and it's almost like I almost liken it to when you go into, if you start working for a new company and there's a lot of different departments, and you have to have some interaction across multiple departments, and you're trying to figure out how everything works, how people interact with each other, who's doing what, and how does that affect the people around them. And that's more or less the approach that I took. And so I thought I had a pretty good grasp on it. And then Mark Waid did what he did with Antarctic Press and Jawbreakers and all that, and I just couldn't believe that actually happened. And yet it did. I was watching it. I was there as it was happening. And so that really got me angry.
You want to know how I knew that was going down? I wasn't really conscious of it, like the direct, Richard and all that.
Uh-huh.
I was part of a comic book group. I'm not going to name names, but like a bunch of industry pros. Like it was a big site, where we would just kind of talk, and some of it was public, some of it was private, and all of a sudden I got noticed that I wasn't part of the group anymore. And I guess I had just started going on some of these streams and started hanging out, but like not like huge or like a lot of exposure. And then I was like, what the heck is this about? And then like you said, you start observing, you start listening, you start keeping your ear, and then you start realizing there is a group of people out there that really despise this group of people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's really not vice versa. It's not like anybody in comics that I absolutely hate Mark Waid. I've never heard any conversation like that. I've never heard anybody say any of these things until after, somebody threw the first stone, and it was
right.
it was on Wade's side. And And that's when I kind of started, when that group, I was just kind of like, I don't think sinister at first. I don't think, oh, this is a conspiracy. Somebody's trying to screw me. I think like, well, what happened, So I contact, I like, somehow, like there must be a misunderstanding. I was kicked out of this group. I've never told this story, by the way. And so then no answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, I tried it again, no answer. And so then, you start listening to Comicsgaters talk a little bit more, and you start hearing their stories. And then you start realizing, well, this is my story. You know what I mean? Like, this is happening now to me. And I didn't start it. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I just started hanging out with these other people, which, by the way, I hung out with Ethan and I hung out with Mike Miller and a lot of these guys even before, Comicsgate. And so did those guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what changed?
The ones who started giving you the silent treatment also hung out with Ethan and Mike. And...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's really like when did the division happen? Like I don't know, like what happened. Well, I do, but you know what I mean. It just seems absurd that it would be over a president, and then also just to throw everybody in Comicsgate under the same umbrella, like they're all, they're all Republican, they're all Trump supporters, they're all this, that, or the other thing. And then also, if you listen long enough to Comicsgate and you see everybody and you listen to their stories, you realize that everybody in Comicsgate aren't Republican.
Right. Some of the most outspoken ones are not Republicans.
Yeah. It's so weird. But then the weirdest thing about all of it is it's like I always felt like I was politically neutral. I always prided myself and I would vote for who I thought was the best for the job, whether it was Republican or Democrat. And so, that's kind of how I would conduct my life. And then it became like the more people started pushing, it almost seems like it was forcing me to decide and take a side, where before I was pretty open-minded. And it seemed like the way everything was pushing me towards was to make a decision. You know what I mean? Like, you can't sit on the fence anymore, Art. You can't be like that because some people or a lot of people think it's wishy-washy. So, choose a side. And so then, this is what I say now. I'd say I'm way more conservative than I am progressive right now. But I would have told you, the opposite probably, 5-6 years ago.
Well, what's interesting is that a lot of people have said something similar, and a lot of people have said that they don't feel like they changed, but the lines delineating the socio-political spectrum moved, and so suddenly they were getting called alt-right or conservative or any other name you want to throw out there, when they hadn't changed their views, they hadn't changed their behavior, yet suddenly they had never thought of themselves before as conservative, but they start getting labeled that over and over again. And it's like, if this group is going to start doing that, maybe they've moved away and I'm now somewhere I never thought I was. I mean, that whole walk away movement with the Democrat Party, I think, is interesting in that I don't think it would have gotten to that point if people who were unhappy with Trump's election had more or less responded the way people who were unhappy with Obama's election had responded, which from the people that I associated with, it was more or less, if you didn't like Obama, you were disappointed that he was elected and then reelected, but you didn't try to go out and, riot in the streets or start name calling everybody who did vote for Obama.
Right.
And then with Trump's election, and I'm not a Trump fan, in the interest of full disclosure, I wasn't a fan of Obama or Trump. But I noticed that with Trump's election, it was a big difference where a lot of the people who didn't want Trump to get elected, instead of essentially saying, okay, well, I'm really disappointed, I'm unhappy, but life goes on, it was almost like for them, life stopped. And they're still stuck in that moment. So I feel bad for them to some extent. I think it's not good psychologically when something like that happens to a point where it just kind of keeps you stuck there and you're not able to move on in spite of it. We, psychologically speaking, we develop the most resilience and the deepest character when we look at stuff that's happening that we don't like, stuff that's out of our control a lot of times, and we resolve to do the best we can in the circumstances we're in. And a lot of people during this whole pandemic, there's a lot of people who unfortunately are losing their jobs, and are experiencing other difficulties in life. But there's a big difference in how you respond. Whereas, are you going to be defeated by those things, or are you going to see them as opportunities to be successful elsewhere? And in the history of the United States, anytime there's been a major economic downturn, there have been many, many people who have used it as an opportunity to be successful doing something else, and they ended up becoming, far more successful after that economic downturn than they ever were before it happened.
Comicsgate.
Yeah, it's the same type of thing. Comicsgate comes along, and the mainstream industry has effectively imploded. And yet there's this thing called Comicsgate that is very different from the mainstream industry. But if you are an aspiring creator or an existing one, like yourself, like Ethan, like Donald DeLay, and you're able to see, okay, there's a lot of chaos going on. However, I see an opportunity where I can be really successful if I can keep my head on a swivel. I can pay attention to what's going on. I can figure out kind of who's who and what's what. And I'm going to do my best to create success out of this opportunity, even though I wouldn't have necessarily thought of doing it this way in prior years.
Yeah, I think it started happening before that. I think there was just kind of just I don't know how these things happen, but just a group of like-minded people that just kind of found each other and then built this thing. And then what they were railing against ended up becoming a reality, like an undeniable reality. You know what I mean? Like we were seeing the industry really, really hurting now. And these are things that I've had observations for these things for years, like decades, working in the industry. and it's really interesting to see them now unfold in a way that's undeniable. You know what I mean? It's not no longer like, oh, Art's talking this crap to death at Comic Cons. We're all drinking in a bar.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had these conversations with Wizard editors and all kinds of people in the day, and it's not even just my observation. There was pretty much agreement across the board, but there was also an unwillingness to do anything because you don't want to mess with the status quo. Like nobody wanted to shake it up. And so then what happens is, Comicsgate, and then some people were brought to it because they were ostracized. There was a problem. And then there's others like me, and I think like Dan Frege shares the same. Like, we're here because we want to be here. We're here because of choice. There wasn't persecution. So then what happens is you get these people together, and then they're, like, it was pretty innocent. It was just like, we want to do our own thing. We want to sell our own books, and we want to kind of be independent. Well, what ended up happening is we were forced to be independent. I don't think anybody set out to be independent of Marvel and DC. But it became inevitable that they wouldn't let us play in their sandbox anymore. There was no crossover. There was no acceptance anymore. There was just, a closed door. And so then at that point you double down, and then you create your own, opportunities from that, which we did. And I'm very, very proud. I do lump myself into this group because I took a chance pretty early on with this, but there have been people that have been taking way more, of the heat than I have. And I appreciate that. And I'm very, very proud to be part of this group. And if people have a problem with that, outside people, then I clearly don't understand that. And like I said earlier, maybe you really weren't my friends anyways, because I don't know how you can listen to these channels and you can be part of, like, just at any point listen long enough. I don't know where the hate comes from. Like, you know what I mean? Where that observation comes from. Because I don't really see it.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that it comes from observation as much as repeating what somebody else says. I mean, I do know that there must be some instances of people experiencing something negative directly from someone saying their Comicsgate. I'm sure that has happened and will continue to happen. But like I said, I just sat back and watched for a long time, and Comicsgate was none of the horrible things that a certain crowd was claiming that they were. And so when there is an echo chamber that you effectively place yourself in, and you're hearing the same thing over and over, I'm trying to remember the psychological term for it. There's a phenomenon with the human brain where if you read or hear or repeat the same thing enough times, eventually it kind of gets lodged into your subconscious mind. And it's not exactly a false memory, really, but it almost works that way, where if you hear it, see it, or repeat it enough times, it's almost like an automated response gets written into your subconscious. And so when you see certain stimuli, such as you're on Twitter or YouTube and and somebody says, "Oh, those, alt-right, blah blah blah," then that automated response that's been written into your subconscious fires off, and it just reinforces that thing that you heard or saw over and over. And I think that's where most of it comes from, honestly. I've talked to a lot of people behind the scenes about, let me try and think of how to phrase this. I don't want to give away anybody's identity that wants to remain private. I know of mainstream creators and editors who their only knowledge of Comicsgate is what people not in Comicsgate and would consider themselves against Comicsgate have said. So if you're a mainstream pro and your only exposure has been to stuff that so-called I don't know, just let's just say Mags Visaggio, for example, total hypothetical. That's somebody who has been against Comicsgate very vocally, very publicly for a long time now. And if an editor, let's say, is working with Mags at DC, and the only thing that they hear about Comicsgate is what they hear from Mags, and if they don't really have any reason to disbelieve Mags at that point, then that's going to form their first impression of Comicsgate. And I just think there's a whole lot of people out there whose first impression of Comicsgate has come from somebody that had an axe to grind and not from direct interaction with Comicsgaters themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then the rest, I think, I could name names, but I won't, is that they know the truth, but they don't want to say it because they don't want those other people to give them shit. You know what I mean? Like they're just going to walk the fence and just keep their mouths shut because it's just not their fight. It's not their thing. Why defend something if you don't have to? Most people don't take that kind of heat on themselves. You know what I mean? I used to when I was younger. I would get into fights for other people, and then I realized that I was paying a pretty hefty price that even sometimes they weren't. And so I kind of learned the hard way. And I'm not talking about just verbal. I'm talking about like getting my ass beat. I've told this story before where there were two of my friends and they're really nice guys. Let's just say they're not like, fighter types or anything like, not that they were wimps, but they're just not that type. And so they would get picked on quite a bit. And so I was walking home, like school's over and you end up walking with a bunch of kids that went to school with you because you live in the same neighborhood. There's just group of kids.
Yeah.
And so we're walking and those two guys are getting beat up. They're just getting beat up by these three guys. So it's 2 against 3, 3. And so I felt if I went over there, we could even the odds, and then, at least they would stand a chance. Otherwise, they're just going to get pummeled, right? So I go over there, and I'm like, well, now it's 3-on-3, right? This is great. I get in the fight. Those guys ran. As soon as the heat was off them, they took off. These are my friends, Joe. They took off, and I got beat up by 3 guys, and I swear – you know how people make fun of that old guy that says, "Get out of my yard"? Yeah. That guy saved my freaking life, man. He didn't care that, I was getting beat up or anything. He just didn't want it happening in his yard. Yeah. You know what I mean? So he just comes out. He's like, "You kids, get the hell out of my yard." And I'm like, oh, shit. So I pick myself off the ground and dust myself off. And guess what, man? I stopped being those guys' friend because I realized those guys are punks, man. It doesn't take a a like a crystal ball, or to really read between the lines to know what I was doing and why I was doing it to help those guys. And there was no mention in school the next day. There was no, hey, Art, thanks, whatever. There was no nothing. And so after that, I was just like, all right. I never officially said, you're not my friend. I just stopped hanging out with them.
Yeah.
Because they were punks. They were jerks. And so I learned a pretty valuable lesson then. Not that I'm not going to stand up and I'm not going to fight the fight, but I'm going to make sure that I have all the facts. I'm going to make sure that the fight is worth getting into. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I'm not just going to do that because, I mean, it was a worthwhile fight. Those guys were my friends. But at some point, too, you just go, well, it's not reciprocated. And God knows what they would have done. Like they would have sold me out in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people who are in a day-to-day situation where they have a lot of acquaintances, but not necessarily friends, they get used to either talking to the same people or seeing the same people repeatedly. And they kind of have the idea that they're all friends when, realistically it's more acquaintances, professionally or otherwise. And I know that there's been several comic book pros over the last 3 years that have kind of, like you were saying earlier, I thought these people were my friends, but suddenly they all stopped talking to me. And then they've had to question, well, were we really friends? I thought we were, but were we?
Yeah, exactly.
It's unfortunate, but
or at least to what degree are we?
To what degree, yeah.
I it's so weird because I think I'm pretty naive and I'm pretty trusting in a lot of ways. And so I usually don't go into relationships thinking like, what can I get out of this? Or, how could I use that guy? Or what is this relationship about? I'm usually just like, they're my friends. Like I'm just like a stupid kid. Like, oh, they're my friends. I can tell them anything. I can do anything, And then you realize that that's just not really how everybody isn't wired the same way. And if you can get one friend, in your life that you can kind of share everything with and that be all end all, then you're really lucky. And I do have that one friend. So I do consider myself very lucky.
Yeah, in my professional life, there were people who I worked with at times where I considered them friends while, I was working at that place, but I don't think any of those friendships lasted much beyond when one of us stopped working there.
Yeah.
In a couple of different places. I'm just trying to think back now if there was anybody, and I don't think so.
When you really go through that in life, it's like when you're younger, but also when you have a kid and your kid starts going to school. Because I started evaluating this. My wife and I were talking about this. When your kid's young and they go hang out at Joe Blow's house or whoever, and so then you become friends with the family. And so you have all these kind of, relationships. And then, they grow up or they grow apart and you're just not friends with them anymore. And then you realize that, the only reason we are friends is because of our kids. But some of it was like, it seemed like it went beyond that, right? Like it was like you were really, really close. Like you shared all these growing up experiences with your kids, and you have these shared moments and things. And then you just realize that, well, I guess it didn't mean that much to them. You know what I mean? Just really interesting things. Like I remember, one of our friends, their kid pulled a tooth out while they were staying here. And I'm like, well, what do I do? You know what I mean? Like most of the time, the Tooth Fairy comes, and they're at that age that they love all that stuff, and so then we call up and the parents and say, well, what should we do? And so you end up playing. Well, you end up playing the Tooth Fairy, for somebody else's kid. And it wasn't easy because when I went in there, she woke up, and so then I mean, like there's a lot of baggage that goes with that stuff. It's not that easy, and so then there's quite a lot that you just did in that one moment for somebody else's kid, and then you just think, well, yeah, these are big moments that we're going to stay friends, and then you realize, no. As soon as one goes off to one high school and the other goes off to another high school, then you never see each other again. I think it's just like you have friends that are kind of because of whatever the moment you're in. So it's kind of like the way I describe it now is like you're waiting in line for concert tickets or whatever, and so then you become friends with that guy in line, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
You're really having a good time. It's like it's a half hour and you're like sharing stuff and hanging out. And then as soon as you get your tickets,
you walk away.
It's like, shit, man, I thought we were friends. I just told you stuff about my growing up that I never told anybody else before. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But yeah, that's kind of the kind of way things are. You want to talk about the Snyderverse a little bit? Do you know anything about?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. That would qualify as crazy talk.
Yeah,
the way that came together.
Holy crap! Yeah, why don't you fill everybody in case they don't know? So yeah, I'm gonna kind of take a little bit of a break and check the chat while you're doing that.
So for anybody who hasn't heard, the Justice League movie that Warner Brothers released a few years ago is getting re-released in 2021 on HBO Max. And we don't know yet if it's going to be one very long film or if it'll be maybe a limited series, something like 6 episodes was mentioned. But basically, the higher ups at AT&T made the decision that this was going to happen, and there's about $20 to $30 million from what they've said that need to they need to invest about $20 to $30 million in things like ADR, which is additional dialogue recording, special effects. I'm sure that they'll have to film some pickup scenes. But from what Zack Snyder has been saying, that it's more or less going to be his initial 4-hour cut, but finished out. So I really doubt that they'll do it as a single, 5-hour film or something like that. I really think that they're going to try to. I think they saw the success of the Mandalorian series on Disney Plus, and AT&T is a direct competitor to Disney now, and AT&T owns Time Warner and HBO Max. So, I think they're going to try and produce something that is comparable to that in terms of the hype for the streaming platform. And they're also hoping to bring over a bunch of people who never would have subscribed to HBO Max otherwise.
I think you're right. Yeah, because I heard what they really want to do is they want to break it up into episodes, and so they're going when they do this. So it's not going to be the Snyder cut, really. So when everybody was like, release the Snyder Cut, I still don't think this is going to be the Snyder Cut. I think it's going to be a serialized Justice League story. What do you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I instead of, because he wanted to do 2 Justice League movies, he wanted it to be a single story that was told in 2 parts, and he was overruled. That's why his initial cut was something like 4 hours, and then when the higher ups at AT&T told the executives at Warner Brothers, hey, you're going to put this out there, you're going to fix it up and give us something that will really shine for HBO Max. I think that's when they started really looking at whatever footage they had and then thinking, well, if you really are going to compete with Disney Plus and you're going to try to have a big hit like The Mandalorian, then you really do need to break it up and have make it a series so that you can have, if they're smart, they'll release it 1 episode per week, the way The Mandalorian was, so that people have a chance to talk about it, hype it up, and get other people interested.
And also just so they can make sure no one's bootlegging it and things like that. I definitely think they're going to serialize it. What do you think?
I think so. And Alfred McKay says, I guess the Snyder Cut will be made like the old serials in theaters with cliffhangers.
Yeah, that's it's going to be interesting, man, because to me personally, when I heard this, I was thinking that unless they're fundamentally going to be spending a bunch of money and get some really talented people in there to try to restructure this, isn't this the same bullshit as we got with the Joss Whedon, take? Like they're going to take a bad source material and then just try to turn it into something else again. You know what I mean? Like, if it's bad, right? Like, the only way you can really fix this is just to do the Snyder Cut, right? And let people decide. But this is not that. So anybody that was, clamoring about the Snyder Cut, I don't think this is going to be what they wanted. I think this is just going to be another, Warner Brothers cash, trying to cash in on this movie by creating or turning it into something that it was never really designed to be.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how the people who've been clamoring for the Snyder Cut, in a way, they'll get exactly what they want because they're getting something called the Snyder Cut. But you're right, it's not content-wise, it's not going to be, because what he had wanted to tell a story in the form of 2 feature-length films. And that's not going to be what is released to HBO Max from everything I can tell.
Well, I don't even know if they have a second part that was filmed. So I'm talking about just the original Snyder Cut that they said that there is there's a cinematic version of the movie that exists, and that's what everybody's been clamoring to see. But what I'm saying is that you're not even going to get to see that because this is going to be something totally different from that,
Mm-hmm.
And you may never ever get the actual Snyder Cut, period, because once this is done, why, unless there's another type of scenario that exists in the future that would warrant, Warner Brothers to go, well, let's do a third version based on the same material. Personally, I would rather see them just make a brand new Justice League series.
I would too. And not let Zack Snyder anywhere near it.
Right, exactly. Like, actually hire some people in that you trust that can do a great job, and back those people and put out a serialized Justice League movie for HBO Max.
Because it was pretty obvious that his Man of Steel was a box office disappointment, and his Batman versus Superman was a box office disappointment. So why would you have him? And from everything I've read, the suits at Warner Brothers who saw Zack Snyder's initial cut, they thought it was absolutely awful.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
So why would you keep going back to the same guy? That's the part I don't understand.
Well, from what I heard is it's not really the people that pulled the plug on the Zack Snyder version and got Joss Whedon and all that. They don't want this HBO Max thing to happen. It's just, it's the other powers that be that are pushing it.
Oh yeah, it's AT&T.
Yeah, it's AT&T. Yeah.
Yep.
So there you go, man. Now, if anybody was worried about like what the pecking order was over there, now you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to be Time Warner's how should I put this? It's definitely Time Warner's responsibility, but in the end, AT&T has the final say over what they do and how they do it.
Yeah.
So it's in a way, it's like where DC Comics has been at with being owned by Warner Brothers.
Well, DC's been owned by Warner Brothers for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of stuff that editors have said over the decades where they wanted to do something but couldn't because Warner Brothers wouldn't let them, or Warner Brothers told them to do something they didn't want to, but they were overruled because Warner Brothers were the big bosses.
Yeah,
so,
maybe. Yeah.
It's interesting that WB is now getting the same treatment from AT&T.
Yeah, it's funny how, what goes around comes around. Yeah, it'll be interesting. To be honest, if they aired it tomorrow, I would probably get HBO Max and watch it. And in a strange way, I'm actually more interested in watching that than even The Mandalorian.
Really?
Maybe it's because I have like I just have that kind of perverse sense of humor, and I kind of want to see exactly what they do. And maybe it's the creative part of me too that's like, how are they even going to do this? Structure.
Yeah. Right.
That's hours of footage. I mean, look at how the mission failed with what was the last Star Wars where they just kind of shoehorned in Leia's performance,
The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, no, but it didn't move anybody. Like, there's nobody that was like, oh, this is great, or this makes it better, or there was not one positive thing. You know what I mean? Like, it was pretty unanimous. And the only time I heard of this really working is, do you remember when Brandon Lee died? Hold on, I'm going to introduce James Dean Anderson, and then I'll talk about The Crow. Hey, James, what's up?
Howdy. How you doing, guys?
My friend.
Good. Welcome.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. We're talking about the Snyder Cut and DC, right, and possibly the HBO Max thing happening.
Yeah, but I've been listening with bated breath, listening to you guys on this one, because it's interesting to hear people who've actually dealt with DC behind the scenes, kind of work their way up with DC itself, because then when everything became, we can now make movies and special effects where we can just make living comic books, to hear real comic book artists that were kind of around going, we saw this worked, we saw this didn't. I think fans really enjoy that. Personally, just as a guy on the outside, it's cool to listen to you or listen to Ethan or guys that were actually guys at DC kind of going, this has nothing to do with comics. Like, what is this crap? Or like, this is friggin' cool. It's actually really cool to hear people just talk out a little bit more of the inside of it.
Well, what's your take, before I tell the Brandon Lee Crow thing, what's your take on this It's not really going to be a Snyder cut, but HBO possibly serializing Snyder's original footage, which is really more accurately what they're going to do.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it seems like it's a perfect opportunity to cash in, to get people to watch your channel, to get people to subscribe and be stuck on your service. With all due respect to Disney, the only thing that they had for me was Mandalorian, and it wasn't enough to excuse what they were doing with Star Wars, because I knew that it would be cool. And I was like, well, at some point they'll release it, because Disney always does. They always do some eventual collector series or something and release it that way. And that's fine. And if they don't, I don't care. I thought that they did so much damage to Star Wars that just for me personally, I'm just like, why would I ever give you guys $1 more? You don't care about fans. You specifically say you don't care about fans. You specifically insult the fans. And just as a fan, I just don't give you my money. I just find like, dude, you can be not a great person and still appreciate your fans. You can have different politics than me. You can vote different than me. You can not vote at all. I don't care how you vote. I read comics because of flying blue people. I didn't care how people voted. I always thought it was funny that people were saying this is a right or left issue. It's like, no, just make good comics. So with movies, it's like, just make good movies that are fun for fans. If it's not fun for fans where we love it, I don't care about your politics personally. I'm just not going to watch your trash, filmmaking. And it really bothers me that people think that has to be a right or left issue. That's dumb. Because, dude, did people really think that like Comicsgate? It was funny when you guys were talking earlier. It's like, well, it turns out that like some of the biggest voices in Comicsgate are not Trump fans. Like, yeah, no kidding. Because, dude, you know how many artists are just liberal as they can be, and one of the reasons why they are that way is because when they saw stuff when they were young, they were like, I don't like this kind of lockdown mindset of I call it the Kevin Bacon theory of what was the movie where he was dancing, like everybody was dancing because Footloose. Everyone cut loose. Yes, Footloose. It was just like that whole thing that they grew up with the 80s, a little bit of like, we're fighting against the man with our, just going off and doing whatever we want to do. I think we kind of had that vibe. And so when we saw it swing the other way, so the pendulum went so far left that people no longer listened to us, where we're just like, dude, we're just sitting in the middle of the plane watching you guys on either side of the wing going like, get back in the plane. What are you doing? Like, we didn't know what was going on. We just knew that we were suddenly being told that we must be like far right or Nazis or something like that. My dad was 17 when he signed up to fight Nazis. Anybody calling me a Nazi, kind of go F yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a fan. I just don't have any patience. But, then I marry a beautiful young woman who she had family who didn't make it out of Poland because of the Nazis. So when I started seeing this stuff, I'm like, okay, first off, don't use terms like that. That's not okay. It's just not okay. And I've had this talk with a couple of pros behind the scenes because even though I'm just a graphic designer, I've kind of been around the comic book industry, just kind of hidden amongst things for a long time and haven't really said much about it. And I was really determined to do this when I was young. I think it was like 22, and I was in Wizard when I was 19. And when I was 22, I was like actually pushed hard. I was given a job in comics for a company in New York. And what I saw going on, I'm just like, this is garbage. I don't like anything about this. And it would take a really long time to get paid. I'm sitting in Kansas, so they didn't care. They didn't care how long it took for me to get paid or if I was paying my bills, because they're a big company in New York and I don't matter. And just another contractor. But what I saw with the industry, I even had people at Image. I was like, man, it'd be cool to live in La Jolla. That'd be so cool to like go work for Image and work around Jim Lee. He's my favorite artist. And got all these guys that, what became Wildstorm, basically at Homage Studios. And I was like, that's so cool. And I think at the time I was always calling it Homage, like Homage Studios, but because I didn't know the French of Homage. I didn't even know what the word was. And I'm like, that'd be so cool. And I actually got to speak to one of their people, and I will leave him nameless and just say that he told me.
It was Brandon Choi.
No, but I'm going to leave it nameless, so you might as well go ahead and guess 19 other people because I'm not going to say.
It was Jeremy Clark.
Matter of fact, I've never met.
It was Trevor Scott.
You just keep asking. Keep asking. Keep asking. And what he told me was that he said, Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I wish it was Will Portasio. This is one of my favorite artists. Okay.
Hey, I hate to break in, but the chat is going to revolt if you don't get the art back up on the main stage. Art.
Yeah, put the art up. Nobody wants
There
to see
you
it.
go. All right, sorry. Go ahead.
Told by somebody at the studio, he was just like, dude, I got to be honest, man. I stopped going to church, and the reason why I stopped going to church is because it was kind of all or nothing. I was going to church a lot, or I was going to, do this job with these guys, and really at the studio, they just aren't. They was kind of looked down on. You don't take days off. You don't take off Sundays. You don't like you're always working, and you're always kind of in the bullpen and what you're doing. And like I got where he was going. Basically, he was just kind of warding me off, just going, "Hey, man, it's not that you don't have the talent to potentially do this. It's that it just may not be the scene." And I found that pretty respectful that somebody was willing to just kind of give me a heads up ahead of time. But I also found
I know who it was. It was Scott Dunbier.
I have literally no idea who that is. Anyway, so they don't no idea. Sorry, did you say Scott Dunbier or Dunbeard?
Dunbier.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a jerk to whoever knows him, but I just don't happen to know him. But
he was
basically going, this is what I want to do with my life.
He was in charge of the whole Wildstorm.
See, and he's insanely important. I didn't know that. But that's the thing. We don't know. We're just guys on the outside going, man, how do I break in? And one of the first people that I ever met in comics, like literally the four guys that I met in comics on the same day were John Byrne, who didn't really say much, but what he was saying was more just like to a crowd of people or whatever. And but he was pretty arrogant, wasn't a super nice guy. Joe Quesada, and he was doing a talk it was like a small group of us for a thing in Kansas City, and Jimmy Palmiotti, and he was great. Jimmy was funny, he was outgoing, and he was just a very real person. I'm like, okay, this is a real person who's been hit in the face before. I can tell this is a real guy talking from the heart. And then later that day, I got to meet George Perez. But as opposed to the other guys where they were kind of giving talks to a group of us, with George Perez, he was sitting alone at his booth, and I mean alone. Everybody was over at John Byrne's thing. It was one of the first things for Kansas City Comic Con, so everybody had a pile of comics from John they wanted to sign because it was right when Next Men was really big. And I go over to George, and he's this nice guy in a Hawaiian shirt. I mean, he's just the sweetest dude in the world. And he introduced me to the comic book business the best way possible because he was kind-hearted, and he was giving me good advice. And I looked over, I'm just like, he was trying to tell me about camera movement. I'm like, I don't quite understand what you're saying. But I was like, look, dude, all those people sitting over there, you're George Perez, and they don't even know you're here. And I find this offensive and stupid in every possible way. I just flipped over the art. I literally picked the page up that he was looking at, flipped it over, and handed him a pencil. I said, just show me what you mean. Show me how to move the camera. What do you mean? He looks at me. He looks over at John Byrne. He looks back at me. He just looks down at the page, picks up the pencil, and draws for 30 seconds. And did a whole panel in 30 seconds. I mean, it couldn't have been more 30. It was the most bizarre thing I'd ever seen. And that's when a light went on. We're like, wow, I have zero ability to do this job, even a fraction of what these guys are doing. It was just a real eye-opener.
Okay.
This is great.
Yeah, I like George. George is a good guy.
But what it told me is that, comics are a very serious game. And so when I look at it behind the scenes, I understand that you guys behind the scenes are playing a different game than just people that are out there making, funny books. Like there's a lot of business going on. There's a lot of deadlines. There's a lot of politics. There's also stuff going back and forth and repairing.
There's a lot of sex going on too. Sex and drugs.
Sure. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why I signed up for comics because, all the sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Well, look at Joe. Joe's like way into it. Joe's been seduced by the sex, drugs, rock and roll part of comic books. Yes,
I remember.
It's all your fault, Art.
It is all my fault.
Yeah, you led me down that dark road.
I was like, your first hit is free. After that, man, it's going to cost your soul.
I remember hearing that you guys were talking about stuff with Comicsgate and talking about the movies today. Originally, that's kind of what you asked me about. To be honest, I got into comics because it was an escape for me. Shops were an escape for me. So I look at it as escapism. I was an abused kid. I was actually a runaway as a teenager, and it gave me a place to hide. And like the local shop gave me a place to hide. And so when I go to a comic book movie, I still want to go alone. I kind of just want to be into the movie. You know, I actually want to feel what's going on, feel the music, understand what the director was trying to get across. And so when you do things with characters that are, you know, what I call legacy characters, and you don't honor those characters, you just go, oh, what the crap. So I think what's going to happen with this is they're going to do what Mandalorian did for Disney. They're going to get a lot of people to sign up for a service. The difficulty is then you're going to have a lot of people that are just going to go, yeah, but it turns out now that was 4 hours of, and this is just my call, but I think it's going to happen. I think a lot of people are going to go, yeah, that was 4 hours of stuff that still made me mad. And I hope that's not the case. Like, I hope they look at that and they just go, man, I'm in it for the long haul. I enjoyed this, and let's kind of kick off and do some more.
Oh, I think you're completely right. I think it's going to divide people even further. I don't think it's going to even satisfy the Snyder people, because it's not going to be the Snyder cut. It's going to be its own beast. So even those people that have been crying out for the Snyder cut, it's not going to be that. So it's going to be a completely different animal. And I think that they're already setting themselves up for some complete and utter failure. The only way it's going to work is if it's really, really good.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? But based on the source material, how could that even be? Like, you can only polish a turd. You can only polish a turd to a certain degree, right? And I don't know. It seems like it'd be polishing a turd.
That's right. The Mythbusters proved you can polish a turd.
I was just going to say that. Technically, they did prove it.
It is still a turd.
It's still a turd, though. Yeah, you can make it look somewhat decent, but it's never going to be that great because the bones aren't there. The DNA isn't there.
Well, I think you're also dealing with a guy who personally, fundamentally felt things in his own life, and he pushed that out so hard that if you look at the way that he makes films that are dark, heavy films. And when you're trying to do something that is, in essence, almost got a little bit more of a family-oriented vibe, especially when you're dealing with Superman or Spider-Man, characters that are known for their more family-friendly approach to, you know, that almost, not Stan Lee, but that just kind of classic, anybody can check this out now, anybody can get into this now vibe. That's tough. I think something that Tim Burton, when he did Batman, he wasn't a Batman fan at all. He didn't pretend to be a comic book fan at all. But when he was told that he was going to get to do Superman, I think a lot of us knew that if he did Superman, he was going to fundamentally change a lot of what we saw and make it a little bit of a darker, more gothic vibe. Because to him, doing the black suit Superman was interesting. To him, doing a guy in, you know, red underwear over the top of his blue spandex, it didn't kick for him. And I think that if we had gotten that, it would have fundamentally changed how DC sold Superman.
And Snyder has said that
it probably would have nixed the whole Snyder cut.
Yeah, I mean, Snyder has he's all but come out and said, I'm a nihilist.
Right.
He hasn't used those words, but he's had many interviews where that's effectively what he communicates, is that he's a nihilist, and it comes across in his so-called superhero movies.
Yeah, and I think it's also fair to say that if we gave this to, John Favreau, said, dude, you're gonna be the guy. Like, if they were able to get a hold of him and get him in the DCEU, we would have seen this really, really cool movie that would have been great for fans, great for everybody involved, because at some point you have to have a love for it. And it's a tragedy that somebody who loves comics as much as Ben Affleck kind of got handed this deal where he just couldn't enjoy it because the fans were just tearing at him so hard that, literally he then looks at the material and I think he knew from the material, man, I'm taking this huge paycheck and I've got this opportunity, but looking at it now, this isn't working. I think he even knew what was up was just nothing but like doomed. And man, you look at what it did to him. It just drove him to depression and just like uncontrollable drinking, going, man, I can't stand this. Every day, you go online and everybody just hates your guts. In the meantime, what they don't understand is the guy's genuinely a Batman fan. I mean, that was a real comic book fan. He's just getting blasted. That's got to be a tough deal.
Yeah, well, also, like, just to what Joe was saying earlier, that Zack Snyder has said. He hasn't said he's a nihilist or whatever, but he has said that he doesn't believe in altruism. So I don't know how, unless you're like Joss Whedon, who's an atheist that can still write, Captain America and put his beliefs on the back burner, which it doesn't seem like
a writer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that doesn't take it personally, and that's the problem with a lot of this representation bullshit. Because if you write many characters, you're not going to be exactly like every one of those people in that screenplay you're writing or that comic book you're writing. So if you're going to write everybody like you, then guess what? It's going to be pretty boring. It's going to be pretty boring very, very fast. So Zack Snyder has actually said that he doesn't believe in altruism. And to me, these things aren't like, oh, I don't believe in it. Altruism exists. There's plenty of examples of it, of like people putting themselves in harm's way for somebody other than themselves for no payoff other than it was the right thing to do at that moment in time. And there'd be people that have paid the price for it too and have died. And the thing is, for him to say that, and okay, that's your belief, but then to write Superman with that same cynicism, that's all that is. That's cynicism. That's not fact and that's not truth. Altruism does exist in the world. There are people that would lay their lives down for a total stranger and have. Don't give me that bullshit, man. And if that's how you believe, then write movies and shit like that is based on that. But don't turn Superman into that. Like that's bullshit. And he was the wrong person for this thing to begin with. He was never the guy that should have done any of these things. And I'll tell you one thing as well. And I've said this on this show. If I was a Warner Brothers exec, and I have heard from it was like Midnight's Edge that it might not have been Zack Snyder's decision to do the Batman v Superman, but it was an outside source like Zack Snyder or something, and I was an exec and they brought that to me, I would say, no, we're not going to do it. Yeah. And especially not going to do it the way you want to do it. And the reason I'd say no is because you're pitting two iconic, loved superheroes against each other in a finite way. Like that you're saying there has to be an outcome. One will die. That's what you're advertising. The one thing about comics is whenever two superheroes meet, there's always a misunderstanding and they beat the shit out of each other. That's in the DNA of superhero comics. And the Avengers movie did that. Those three Avengers, they fought each other. But guess what? The setup and the way they got out of it was all perfect. They stood their ground. They got an understanding. They learned a respect for each other, then moved on. But the way Zack Snyder did the Batman v Superman and the way it was structured for a 2-hour movie about two characters going at each other. It wasn't an aside. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was what the story was. And even if, how they like to bring Dark Knight Returns into the whole equation, what Frank Miller did is exactly what we're going to do. But it isn't. Dark Knight Returns wasn't about Batman killing Superman. That's not what the story was about. It was a part of it, but it wasn't about that. And also what Zach missed, and he's such a fucking douchebag idiot, I don't care, he's a jerk, is that in Frank's version, Batman didn't want to kill Superman. He wanted to bring him down to a human level, a humanistic level. He wanted him to bleed. That's why that was so important. He wanted to beat him up and humble him and to know that it was a human that did it.
He also wanted to know, he wanted him to know that I did it. Like
that a human.
You don't understand, I can beat you. You are not imperfect. You're not infallible. Frankly, I defeated you, and I'm a human. Just slowing him down. If you
no. That's not what it was about at all.
Trying to slow him down, you knew it was going to be tough.
I'm sorry to disagree. That's not the story I read. The story I read is Batman just wanted to humble Superman because he knew Superman was more important than him. He wanted to humble him and to bring him down to Mom, Pa Kent. He had, if you remember the story, he had become so aloof. He was a government stooge. Yeah. Superman was just a tool. He wasn't thinking about truth, justice, and the American way anymore. He was part of the problem. He was helping proliferate. I can never say that. The escalation of the nuclear arms race and all that stuff. Right. And so what Batman wanted.
At the time he wrote that, I mean, that was a pretty big deal.
Right, that was the backdrop of what was going on. So the reason Batman staged his own death is because he knew the fight would lead to his death. He knew that, but he didn't want Superman to have that on his conscience either. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't want Superman to have to kill him. So he staged a heart attack and a funeral. And so the reason he did that is so he could get Superman to bow out gracefully. But he had done his job. He made him bleed. So now Superman could now start thinking like a human again, instead of a tool or a god or whatever the hell, his trip was in that story. But that's what Zack Snyder missed, is he just like, I want to kill you. But that's not what Batman ever wanted to do. Because it's ridiculous. If Batman's the smartest man in the DC universe, that's an absurd goal, because Superman could kill him in a myriad of ways in a heartbeat. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't even. Right. It
was a ridiculous task.
Yeah, it's a stupid task, but that was never what he wanted to do. So Zack, by doing what he did, made Batman look like a complete an utter idiot, and also he made him look like a villain in that movie, because that's the same thing that Lex Luthor wanted to do. So Batman in that movie didn't look any better than Lex Luthor.
Well, another thing that it was kind of pretty upsetting was this was the same guy that at some point in the movie he's like, oh, he's a detective, and then just totally lost the plot on that. And for me, just as a Batman fan or as a reader, I would rather read a good detective story. That kind of Tim Sale Long Halloween vibe of just reading a great Batman story. I don't think that there is enough good detective work, and I'm hoping with the Pattinson deal they kind of just go back to that. Like, give me a Batman story that is a real true detective, because the idea that he's the world's greatest detective, we know he's not the world's most powerful hero. Right, we know there's somebody out there that can do something that he just can't do. But it would be really cool to think that you could just make an awesome kind of a noir vibe, kind of a Sean Gordon Murphy version of his costume. Just have him some kind of caught between time. The one thing about his time structure in Tim Burton movies is they would have that gothic vibe where it didn't really matter what the year was. It was just cool.
It was timeless. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been watching this show, and if anybody wants to watch the best Batman take ever, filmed take on Batman, watch Persons of Interest, the first 2 seasons. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's Jonathan Nolan before Jonathan Nolan went off the crazy train on Westworld. But Jonathan Nolan also wrote, I think, one of the best Batman stories ever, which is the Joker, Christopher Nolan film. That was pinned by Jonathan Nolan.
Yeah, The Dark Knight.
David Goyer. But I don't think David Goyer, knowing what I know about him, I don't see his DNA in that movie very much. But I do see Jonathan Nolan, and I do see Christopher Nolan's DNA in that. And so that's his pedigree. And Persons of Interest, do you guys know that show? Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes.
It's what they did is there's 2 characters in that, and one of them is clearly Bruce Wayne. That's the Finch character, the guy with the money that limps with the glasses. That's Bruce Wayne. And then there's Batman, who's the guy that's on the street that's doing all this stuff. And you talk about, and then the female lieutenant or whatever, that's Gordon. And the way that show is structured and the dynamics of that whole show, if you guys haven't seen it, go see it. And if you don't see what I'm talking about, go watch it again. Because if you watch the way that thing's structured up, it's exactly Batman done right. You know what I mean? Like, it's all those things you're talking about, James Dean. It's like he does detective work. He finds these people out. It's kind of dark. It's kind of gritty. It's not always pretty, the way they do it. But they work within the confines of the law, which I always thought the reason Batman needs Gordon is there has to be that. Otherwise, he's just the Punisher. He's just a vigilante. But if he works within the confines of the law and respects the law, all the way to the point of not killing, because that's putting himself above the law, then it works. And if you watch those first 2 seasons, man, and then you just project Batman onto it, you're like, holy crap, man, this is the best Batman, ever done. It's so awesome.
Isn't that crazy that as fans, you just give us one thing that's like great and we know it's great. Like the Batman animated series, when we watched that when we were kids, it eclipsed anything that had ever been done for Batman. It wasn't even close. It was such a high art form that those guys were literally animating on black cells. They were painting it in reverse just to get the vibe right. And you got to think, as an artist, that is one of the bravest, most ridiculous things to do. And I knew some guys that actually worked on that, like Todd Aaron Smith. And what they said is they brought these animators in, and the first thing they did was make them draw, okay, here's the character. Now you're all going to sit here and draw it 1,000 times. And then they did the next character. Now you're going to draw this one 1,000 times. And it's what they did to get the style down.
Yeah.
And that is just so cool to see people actually give a crap about making sure there's consistency, about making sure that not only is it solid, but then we're even going to do things that are experimental that nobody's even tried to do. And then we saw stories come out of that, like the one about Mr. Freeze and his wife. It's like, if you didn't feel like you were hit in the gut from watching that when you were young, you're emotionally dead. Like there's just something wrong inside, like you're broken. Because
what they did with Clayface, like they turned this kind of stupid character. I'm sorry, man. Yeah. I thought he was kind of dumb in the comics, and they made him a really cool visual character. I still want to see Clayface in a movie. Like that's a character I still would want to see on the big screen.
They gave him some pathos.
Yeah, and they just made him cool visually.
Yeah, they made him actually pretty scary. I mean, I was just like, wow, this is pretty high art. But then we had also cool things come out of it that were fun, like Harley Quinn. And Harley was great, and obviously she's made a pretty big impact on the comics. DC has made a lot of money on Harley Quinn on comic books.
Yeah.
That they didn't have otherwise. And sometimes it just takes a fun writer, somebody that really appreciates the characters. So, sometimes you can get people in there like Jimmy Palmiotti is, he's going to enjoy it. And he's done some fun stuff with it. Amanda Connor's done some neat work, and you can have a good time, kind of enjoying some of that. But man, dude, Jim Lee, when he did Suicide Squad, I love his art so much, and yet it kind of felt like it's hard to describe. It's almost like there was something missing from the characters, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I'm a massive fan of his work. It was something about like she's a cartoon, and like she's just kind of a living cartoon.
Yeah.
And you can't take that away from her, because that's what that character is and was, even to the point that it's like comics in reverse. We love the comic book and we want the characters in the movies to be just right. So when you saw it become a comic book character from the cartoon, then you wanted the cartoon character in real life to be right. Like, no, that's not the animated character. That's too serious. Or like, no, she's too skanky. It's like, this isn't the girl that loves the Joker. What's going on?
Yeah, and I think it's clearly sometimes it's contempt. The creative people have contempt for the core source material, and sometimes it's just a lack of understanding and just a paycheck to them. And then sometimes it just really is just the perfect storm to mess it up. You know what I mean? Like good intentions, but they just weren't able to execute it in a good way.
So do you feel like that's kind of what we're seeing with, like, which one of those do you think is what's going on with Snyder? Because for me, I think it's fundamentally he does not know how to write heroes because he doesn't believe in them.
I believe you're completely correct. I think that he could probably do stuff like The Watchmen. Like, I won't take The Watchmen away from him. I think it was pretty good.
Oh, I thought it was great. But then once again, that whole thing was fundamentally a guy who didn't believe in real heroes. It was like, no, you people would be horrible. And he was literally breaking down the whole genre. It's funny how far left mentality makes you go, there can't be heroes because I don't believe in them. And so it's almost like, it makes me kind of sad for them because it makes me just go like, dude, really? Do you really live in a world in your head where there are no heroes, where no one does anything altruistic?
Yeah, it is a pretty sad place to be. But if you think about it, most of the time they're very unhappy, because there's always something going wrong. The environment, the pollution, the politician, there's always something. And I think instead of, if you're always focusing on what's wrong or what's bad, then that's what you're training yourself to see. But I teach my daughter, what we try to do is like today, I look out the window and it's a beautiful day. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's pretty amazing. I get
when you got on, dude, we can hear it. When you got on, you're just like, California's beautiful. I don't need it for 5 minutes. I'm so sorry. I doubted you.
I didn't go that far, but yeah. There are those days though, and then you realize that that's why everybody wants to live here,
Oh yeah. No, that was pretty great. And I felt like when you got on here, another thing that you were dealing with is you were talking about just drama. You guys were just discussing the drama, where it come from, where it was going. And it sucks that people feel like they need to pick a camp, pick a friend. But I will tell you, from somebody that actually works for people on both sides of that argument, it just sucks for me, just because I look at it like, but I don't really hate anybody. I'm actually here because you guys are still, even on your worst day, less likely to make a lack of business sense than the average comic book pro anymore. Like companies and retailers. When Ethan told us this story of just a couple of days ago, when somebody saw a guy come in a Cyberfrog shirt and they were pissed in a comic book shop, so they were going to get him. They needed words. They needed to get him. Need to mess with him. I read that, or like I saw him saying that. I'm just like, okay, this is real. This is, it strikes you as odd that anyone in the middle of a pandemic where businesses have been shuttered against their will would get the doors open and then have someone be such an effing douchebag that they actually thought it was a good idea to troll one of the last paying customers that they'd had in comics, and one of the only ones they'd had in a long time come in the store. It just, from a business standpoint, there is not a fast enough way for me to tell you you're fired.
It seems like that is most likely an employee who is there because they think it would be cool to work in a comic book shop, as opposed to an employee who is personally invested in the success of that shop.
Well, obviously they're not invested in the success of it. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell the fact that they would even occur to them to say that out loud, because the last thing I would want to get, like, even if you were going to mess with them in the store, I just couldn't imagine saying that on, Twitter or whatever, as if no one else is reading Twitter that you don't like. Right. And it's just like, well, you obviously don't care about the person that you work for, because, dude, there's a pandemic. What are you doing? These people just need to keep their doors open. It's the only reason why you have a job. It's like, how do these people live and not care whether or not they have a job the next day? That's just weird to me. It's just weird to me. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean,
they clearly understand what they're up against. I don't think they're completely evaluating what the situation is. Like, they're not even happy that the pandemic is kind of, we're getting back to normal and that they can entertain people. Like, they're not looking at the greater good. They're just looking at the negative aspects. And this is the thing, James. I think that more people are they're very, very selfish. So it's just about how they feel. And then they project that on everybody else. And if you don't feel that way, then screw you. I'm going to do everything in my power to destroy you or to make you uncomfortable. And And that's why the Me Too, all this stuff is scary, or like this representation shit, because what they're doing is they're placating that mindset. You know what I mean? Like, I have to see representation, or we have to, if we're gonna have a story about a strong female, then we have to have all strong females working on the movie or on
you must have the same haircut or you can't be doing this
right
job.
That's how childish they are. They don't think, like, they write all of history out, like every great writer that has ever existed, male or female. You have Mary Shelley. Where's the female in Frankenstein, right? She wrote male characters. She created.
She did it really well.
Yeah, she wrote the first sci-fi horror. I think the first sci-fi ever. You know, and the thing is, she was a lady. She was a lady. She wrote male characters. There was The Bride of, but you know, she was a female, and where's the representation there? Like, that's why how it's so ridiculous to say they have to be just like me to write it. We need representation. That is such a bullshit construct that is completely arbitrary and not even remotely true. You know,
and you look at Neil Brennan, and people just, when they see Neil Brennan, like, you were one of the big writers from the Chappelle Show, like, you know, like they couldn't put it in their head, and he's just like, yeah, don't be a racist. I can write funny stuff. Just because I'm not, you know, as funny as Dave Chappelle the actor doesn't mean I can't write it.
Yeah. Louise Simonson, you know, wrote some of the best Superman stories, the best Superman stories. And Nascente wrote some of the best Daredevil stories. Like, you know, like what are you saying?
That's not counting women in artistic talent. I follow Sandra Hope a lot. I love her work. I think she's a great inker. I just dig what she does, and I dig her as a person. I think she's really sweet. Yeah. And you know what? She just posted something today where she's like, this is what I have to complain about today. Nothing. I'm grateful and thank you for everything. This country's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, wow, Sandra Hope is she's like a beautiful flower in a field of crap. You know, that just like springs up. Like, how did we find you? We need more of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Nascente. I mean, just good stuff.
But it's a false narrative. It's created to virtue signal and to get somebody some virtue signal points. That's the only reason it exists. Whoever came up with that term virtue signaling is a freaking genius, because at first I was like, what the hell does that mean? The first time I heard it. And then once I understood, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so accurate, man. Like, that's exactly what that is. It's like, I get some brownie points for saying that, or for hiring, you know, like in a patronizing way. Like, I hired a strong woman of color. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's pretty.
Oh, guys, I got a little story for you. So I actually started doing some live streaming with something. I won't blast the channel or anything, but then not long after I started with them, they picked up a girl to be on there with them, and what we saw immediately was that her politics were very left, and she would do things that were just not super great business decisions, but she was still a far cry from when we had one of the shows and some actors were on it. And one of the girls that was on there was like, yeah, I'm working on a movie right now, and it's got great representation. And then she started like, we've hired people, and she literally lists the type of people that she's hired to give work to. And you watched the other guys that were actors that were just on the screen, and you just watched their eyes just kind of roll like, oh, for the love of crap. Because she's literally so lost in her own politics that she doesn't understand, as a white person, how utterly racist everything she's saying sounds. Even she's a nice girl and she was just doing her best. It's just like she's been so programmed, she just doesn't understand it.
Yeah, she's just following along with the narrative that was provided without thinking for herself.
Yeah, rather than just going, Don Cheadle is amazing. I don't care that he's black. I care that he's an amazing actor. People are just like lost in this whole mentality of what they, like, oh, but because he's black, he gets, he needs to be in there because we need to have black people in. Like, well, you should want to have a bunch of black actors and actresses in a film. That should be a normal thing. You shouldn't brag about it. That should just be kind of like, well, duh. That's what's so funny about it. Like, they act like it's a big deal. It's like, why would that be a big deal that you don't have everyone of the same race? Also, why would it be a big deal if they were the same race and it's a war movie about a bunch of people that were Germans in World War II or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing with the representation on that? Because you don't need it in that regard. It's just
you're rewriting history. Yeah.
Yeah. I see that in video games. I'm like, what the crap? It doesn't seem to make any sense. And since I'm not a gamer, I can just kind of look at it from a distance. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Whatever.
Yeah, none of it makes any real sense. It's only about virtue signaling. That's why I brought it up. It only works based on one single criteria, that it's about making yourself look good, in the eyes of whoever. Simple-minded people that would actually be taken by that. But not actually thinking that that's very condescending.
That's weird. They don't think it's condescending.
The best.
It's like, how do you not think this is condescending? Because when you call Comicsgate a bunch of like racists or homophobes or this, that, I'm like, do you think anybody in Comicsgate, when the first time they saw Blade, was it like, yeah? Because we hadn't seen movies that were cool like that. Do you think that there were a bunch of people in Comicsgate who didn't think Black Panther was cool as a character long before there was a movie with him? Because the idea of that is ridiculous and dumb. I think what they forget is like, no, we just want cool characters. We look at characters like Black Panther, and it's the same thing like Snake Eyes. We just think they're just cool, and it doesn't, we don't care what race they are. They're cool. Nobody said, oh, well, I don't want to buy Spawn because it's a black character. That's moronic. Everybody was just like, dude, Todd McFarlane did it again. He did something great, and he did it outside of the industry. Awesome.
And isn't that weird when you applaud somebody that's white that picks a black character? Like, that's weird, man.
It's weird, and honestly, it's just racist and insulting and creepy, and it's like, dude, how do you not see this as just awful? These are people. Don't reduce them to the skin color, man. Melatonin, or like the melanin, was it melatonin? The melanin in your skin, that's the whole thing. My dad said something really interesting to me because he was way older than me, way older than my friends' dads.
And just for the record, James Dean Anderson's dad is black.
He's pretty not much of anything. He died about 25 years ago. And what he said was, well, that's the thing. He was born in 1928. He lived through the Depression. So the last time our country went through one of these, that's how he grew up. He grew up with nothing. And what he told me is that when he signed up to fight in World War II, the biggest thing that he noticed very quickly is that, being from he was a Midwestern kid, but he originally, I think his family was from California, and they came here because they just needed work, and California was just going through crap too. And when he signed up for the Marine Corps, he said there were two things that I learned really fast. And this was his opinion on racism or sexism or any of the isms. In a foxhole, in a two-man foxhole, all you care about are two things. Can they shoot straight, and are we the same blood type? And that resonated with me my whole life, because that is the wisest shit anyone has ever said to me. Where you're just like, well, that's pretty streetwise. Can they shoot straight, and are we the same blood type? All that tribalism crap goes right out the window when you really look at something like, can we survive together what we're going through right now? And I think that's something that people are going to find. One of the reasons why Antifa and a lot of these idiots got quiet when all this pandemic thing dropped is that they realized that nobody wanted to listen to that right now. It's like, dude, you guys are just noise. We need to know what's going on because we don't know if we're going to live or die tomorrow. We don't know if we're going to get a virus that's going to kill our relatives. This is something serious. We don't really know what's going on, but we know we're seeing some bad stuff coming out of China. There are a lot of people dying. So we were just kind of up in the air. We didn't know, now they're shutting down schools. Now they're shutting down businesses. Oh, crap. Oh, no. We had real things to worry about. And I hate to say it, but it's almost like the United States occasionally needs a kick in the pants to be reminded how unbelievably lucky we really are.
Yeah, I always say this. I say, that crazy guy that lives on your block that's a survivalist, you know, he's got all these guns and he's a hunter, and, you know, by liberal standards, this guy is a nutcase, right? I'm not saying he's a nutcase. I'm just saying by liberal standards, right? Because I happen to have two guys like that, and I'm very, very good friends with it. And this is not just that I get along with them, but this is also why is when the shit hits the fan, who's the guy that you're going to become the best and closest friends with? You know what I mean?
Because it's not going to be the 23-year-old with the crazy hair paint or like the hair color for that month, whatever the color is that month that everybody cares about.
Or the guy with high ideals about the way the world should be versus the way the world actually is. These guys are dealing with the world on real terms, and those are the guys, you know, when the zombies rise and start coming after us, those are the guys that you're going to want to hang out with.
Yeah.
Because
like when I say when it all goes down, I'm picking friends like Eric Weathers. He's a real person. Like that's why I have friends like that now. Like, you know, is Eric still in the chat? I saw him in the chat earlier. Bring him on. Eric has a very real, if you can, like he's got a very real perspective about life in general. He's a real person, and he's actually a pretty genuinely good dude. I'd be really curious to hear as a dad, like kind of what he's kind of dealt with this, having a campaign, what his thoughts are with like all this drama and stuff going right now. So if you can, if you feel like it, bring him on. I'd love to kind of hear from him.
James, you haven't heard the truth about Eric Weathers? I'm sorry to break this to you, but he's a puppet.
Okay, so full disclosure, Eric was actually working with me on projects before there was a Comicsgate like thing for us. We both ended up in Comicsgate separate of each other, even though we live in the same town and we're working together. We both just individually ended up gravitating towards CG at the same time. I was getting brought in to do people's logos and stuff, and he was, you know, starting to do lettering and stuff for people. But he is genuinely, and I say this with all due respect to most of the people I've ever met in my life, he's one of the best human beings I've ever met.
He's got the best hair in Comicsgate too.
Maybe puppet was a little harsh. A remote-controlled animatronic. Okay.
Okay, that's actually more accurate. That sounds right.
He's a really likable puppet.
Right.
Yeah, for anybody in the chat who might not know, I edited Flying Fortress Remastered for Eric and had a great time doing so. So I also have a secret history with Eric, similar to Mr. Anderson.
I also have a secret history with Eric. We dated the same girl in high school.
I thought you were saying we dated. I was like, whoa, this just got to the weight extreme.
Mine's completely fabrication.
I was going to say, Eric has aged really well.
Yeah. He looks great. Well, he never comes out of his basement, so, you know, the sun doesn't hit him.
Yeah.
He's looking great these days.
He's looking great these days.
Wow, Eric, you were on top of the world, buddy.
God, Eric, you are hot. Yeah. Go back his campaign too. Battlebrook Road looks amazing, and I don't know. Somebody told me that maybe James did the logo or something for it, but the logo.
Yeah, I did do the logo for that one for this newest rendition of it. I think what happened was he got some help from some of his friends, and he never wanted to ask me for help because we worked together on stuff, and so the last thing he was ever going to do is, you know, ask me for any help for anything, and because I'm an egotistical douche anyway, and so it's the last thing that he needs in his life. But Eric probably just got, from the sounds of it, he kind of got some ribbing on some stuff that he had done with his previous logo or whatever, where they were like, yeah, it doesn't really fit it or this or that. And so he comes to me and asks me to do it. Yeah, dude. Like, yeah. Like, I owe him so many favors of video editing last minute where he would have to like come in and play superhero for me. So it's like I am the last person to not be able to, you know, cash a favor in on that one.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Eric and I, we did some projects where we had some clients that just made his life hell.
That's why I like Comicsgate too, because it really is just, you know, sharing information, helping each other out, trying to do good comics.
Yeah, and it should be. Like, I've watched Eric grow leaps and bounds as an artist. The guy is he's not even the same artist. He's amazing.
Yeah, I told him that the other day. I said that you're just getting better right in front of all of our eyes. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is normally you don't get to see that as much because you see an artist that's more developed before they get to the gig, right, to the big show. And in Eric's case, he is a dad. He did have other things going on. Like, this wasn't like the only thing that he did, but he was also a digital painter. And he picked up digital painting really fast and really easy, to the point that I'm telling you guys, as good as he is as a comic book artist, if you saw his digital paint work, you'd be like, wait, what? You know, like he's one of those guys that could legitimately be working for a pro, like a Wizards of the Coast type company, or a company that's doing Magic the Gathering cards, and you look at their stuff and you're like, oh, this is just top notch. So yeah, he's a very multi-talented guy.
And he's bilingual.
Oh, and there's that.
You know, there's a big MCU movie conversation happening in the chat about we were talking about superhero films earlier, and a couple of people were saying how the MCU version of Iron Man and Black Widow are better than what they've got going on in the comics. And I'd have to say that is absolutely true for Iron Man.
Seems pretty accurate, actually.
Yeah, and I really, my knowledge of Black Widow is really Bronze Age, so I never read any of the modern stuff in the last 20 years of her, but I know that the last couple years, from what people have been telling me of Black Widow, is that she's essentially been ruined as a character. So what do you guys think as far as Robert Downey Jr.?
I didn't grow up with her. I grew up, as a matter of fact, I didn't really see her until she was on the cover with Captain America and Wolverine from Jim Lee. And that was kind of my first Natasha Romanoff experience, if you will. And so, to be honest, I can't really compare her to the past. I can only kind of, just show off of that what I saw. I just thought they missed giving her the respect of somebody they should be more scared of. Like, dude, you should actually be legitimately scared of this chick, man. That's like a Russian spy.
Yeah, well, in the older comics, she absolutely was. Characters like her and Hawkeye, who didn't have powers, but they had the same thing going for them that Bruce Wayne did as Batman, which was total dedication to their mission, not only whatever that happened to be in that issue, but just in terms of their overarching mission as a hero. And they were able to do some really impressive stuff without powers, and they gained the respect of fans and the loyalty of fans because of that. But over the last 20 years or so,
well, it's like the Punisher didn't have powers, but he's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Well, over the last 20 years, Hawkeye, Clint Barton went from being this, real hard case, scrappy, tough, cool character to being some kind of twee, isn't that so silly kind of joke of a character. And dude, I'm not sure what they've done with Black Widow.
Right call. When I saw West Coast Avengers, I picked up a comic and I'm just like, what the crap? How is this anything we're handing to people? I just was stunned. It didn't even register as like a possibility that somebody wanted to make money. You look at it, you're like, they're trolling. At this point, they don't want to make money. They're just trying to piss people off with hot takes.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like. As a matter of fact, I would put that, obviously we see that with Snowflake and Safe Space. It's like you designed a character with a magic backpack because that says Mayan and Incan. Because, those girls with their magic backpacks, that was a real common thing for the Mayans or Incans. Like, what is it? Like, nothing about it made any sense. You got a character who his only power is he can keep all these people safe underneath him. Oh, except for the one problem of he can only use his power to save other people. It's like, so wait a second, why don't I just wait for him to, be alone and then hit him with a hammer? Like that's you can be defeated by a rock. really? I don't.
Yeah, I'd love to find out. I'd love to get an official word from some insider on whether that whole new Warriors fiasco was
Just
simply a parody, or
no, it's real because there are guys that ordered it. They went ahead and they ordered it.
no. What I'm saying is that from an editorial perspective, like, are they? I'd love to know, was this done as just a big FU to?
Yeah, of course it was. I mean, this is Marvel. This is the same company that I don't know, not even a year ago, it was maybe about a year ago, they put out a book from a guy that's, Nick Bradshaw was the artist. He's a great artist, but I mean, he's an Art Adams clone. And I'm just saying that now. I'll say it loud and proud, dude. You're an Art Adams clone, and there's nothing to be ashamed of in calling you that. Art Adams is incredible. But the thing is, with his stuff we were seeing a lot in Guardians of the Galaxy, a lot of those books. But Bradshaw is an unbelievable artist, and you look at this art, and the whole book was like a Mojo book. The whole thing was literally like a dig on Comicsgate. It was trying to make Mojo a Comicsgater. Like, oh, they're all fat trolls live in their parents' basement or this or that or whatever. And what I found about the whole thing that was hilarious was the first beginning part of the story about Mojo or whatever. It was so obvious that when you read it, you're like, no, this thing proves our point, because they had this great artist. It made you go, man, I want to look at this. And yet the writing was so awful. And so, everyone's just walking around happy, and you guys don't understand. The world is like wonderful. And like nothing was taken seriously at all. I'm like, dude, I don't know what New York you're living in, but if you think everyone's happy in New York and all the colors are bright and pretty and everything's great, you don't even live in reality.
Yeah, I don't know. What I'd like to figure out is if the whole new Warriors fiasco came from someone in editorial, or if it really started with Kibblesmith and someone in editorial signed off on it.
That's a great point.
Because, the big two, have had serious problems in leadership for a number of years now, and I'm just curious how much of it is coming as a result of those editors trying to dream this stuff up, or if it's ridiculous excuses for comics creators that simply get, all their projects rubber stamped because the editors are more or less schedulers at this point at Marvel.
Well, Kibblesmith, he's a comedy writer, right?
Yeah, for Colbert.
He worked for Steve Colbert, so he'd be the perfect role.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is how it went down, but just a speculative answer to you, Joe, is that he probably came to Marvel. Kibblesmith came to Marvel and said, "Wouldn't this be funny?" I think what Marvel did that was a big mistake is that they started advertising it at a really bad time.
Yeah.
So I think it questioned everything was a question, but I think it was meant to be kind of a parody. But the only reason I think maybe not is because wouldn't they be making fun of their own points of view?
No, that's just it. The whole point of it is that we're so awesome in our beliefs that we control you because we're so above you mentally. You guys are so beneath us, and we're such a waste of time. And we know we won't get fired because we know that people will have our backs. And to be honest, it's not like they're wrong. Obviously, we didn't hear about a bunch of people getting fired. What we should have heard was this was not cool. The company apologizes. We don't hear any of that anymore. No one ever cares about reality in business anymore from these companies because they're such big corporate conglomerate, tiny chunks of them, that they don't even have to be profitable. How many times have they shown over and over that comics can make great books, but instead chooses to make garbage? The proof of that is you have your Sean Gordon Murphys. You have guys like Scott. Scott Snyder is not on the right at all. Right? That is an openly leftist kind of type guy. And I don't mean like leftist, but I mean he's just a guy that's doing what he thinks, he believes. And it's what works for him. But when he writes characters, it's not like he can't write characters that don't
think the way that he thinks. Chuck Dixon didn't have a problem writing left or right. He had a problem with characters that all sounded the same. And it's when you refuse to write characters to have a different individual, unique voice, that's when I start checking out. Like, dude, I don't know why anybody would pay for this. And now they want $5 for a comic book that you read in 10 minutes, and you're like, what did I just read? What just happened? So there's no experience. It's the experience you miss. And well, if there's no experience, there's no escapism. If there's no escapism, I'm just blowing money, and I might as well just, play video games or go to the bar or whatever that, hell we're supposed to do now.
Or get a frog book.
Get a frog book for 25 to who knows how much dollars or whatever, because I spent more than $25 when I got them, and I enjoy them, and I like my frog books. And the crazy part is when you go back into Ethan's history and look at his first books, I didn't know Ethan Van Sciver in his first books. I didn't see those books really in the store that I grew up going to, and yet one of the covers looked really familiar, so I remember one of them being advertised, and it was an Art Adams cover, and I was a big Art Adams fan. And guys, I have the Art Adams Cyberfrog cover. I have a bunch of Cyberfrogs of the first stuff, just because my store owner, he came to me this last year. He knew I was in Comicsgate. He was very sick. He had cancer. He was dealing with cancer. Kind of having a really hard time with the store because an employee that had worked for him turned out to have been ripping him off and selling a whole bunch of his expensive back issues, just long boxes full of them, like 60 long boxes of stuff that he stole from him. And so it was a really hard time for him, and just dealing like the worst year. And then, of course, you're already dealing with all the horse crap with, politics and stuff in comics. And I can assure you the guy wasn't a Comicsgate guy at all. And yet he was just like, James, I've known you. You've always come in and you've done signings, or you've done sketches for kids on Free Comic Book Day and stuff like that. I know whatever I'm hearing in CG, the rumors or whatever, Comicsgate. I know that stuff isn't true about you. So that's what's funny about Comicsgate. Everybody's like, oh, well, I know you're not. They always do that. It's like, oh, well, I know you're not a bigot and racist. But, Comicsgate, that's what it is. Like, no, dude, you're an idiot. And it's like you hear that a lot. But when he said it, I could just see that he was really having a hard time even asking for help, and his store was in a bad way. So I don't know if his store will be there after all this went down. And his store is 35 years old. It's just, it crushes your heart.
That's looking great art.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so this is this is not the variant. This is the piece of artwork that I'll be using to highlight the next campaign, which is going to be the Black and White Second Chance campaign. So we're gonna relaunch Volume 1 to give all you guys a second shot at it. So this is going to be made into trading cards that will go with each one of the books, absolutely free, and it will be a print that we're going to put into the campaign. And also, I just talked to Kyle Ritter, and Kyle is on board to color it. So,
oh, great!
It's going to have some great Kyle Ritter colors on it.
Hey, while we're speculating about things, we talked about the Justice League movie earlier, and then people in the chat were talking about kind of comparing the MCU characters like Iron Man and Black Widow to comics characters, and how it seems like there's certain characters in the MCU that have just been done so much, have been portrayed so much better than in the comics themselves. And another one item of speculation that's been going on in the chat is, what is it do you think that has gotten... Well, let me back up for a minute. So Axel Alonso got fired after he tried instituting, the company-wide, all our comics are going, well, maybe not all, a lot of our comics are going woke policy. And sales dropped drastically, and Alonso got fired. Then Cebulski gets brought in, and people in the chat were making the point that a lot of that stuff has continued. some of it has been dialed back, but some of it has not. Obviously, we're talking about the new Warriors and how that got approved. And so we're wondering in the chat, what do you guys think? And Art, I know you've got a personal history with good old CB.
He's a good guy.
What do
I've actually met
what do you guys
CB,
think is
and
the
I
main
was trying to
reason?
I was trying to get some work with Marvel at one point. I actually talked to CB a few times, and he actually seemed like a pretty genuine human being, because he wasn't asking you. And here's how I knew: he wasn't asking the questions that the norm guys were asking. He wasn't asking about politics. He wasn't asking about how I felt about stories. He wasn't talking about deadlines. He was asking me like, how's your work-life balance? How are you with your family? And it was a very interesting feeling that I got immediately. It was like, why does this guy actually this guy actually cares that you're not a nut bar? That you
He doesn't. No, he doesn't. I'll tell you why he doesn't.
Oh no, really?
No, he wanted
an act.
Fuck yeah, that dude's a fucking soulless piece of shit. That guy, I'll tell you what he does is he gets you to break down and like he's a normal guy and he wants you to talk about stuff that you wouldn't normally talk about with anybody.
So is he playing an A&R guy where they're just trying to get in your head?
He wants information. Yeah, he's just an information gatherer. So what he does is he reads you and then goes, oh, maybe I can connect with them on a human level. So he does that. He gets information from you because
we had that in the music business. They were A&R guys.
That's what he did to me, and I got fired because of it because I was the helpful Hannigan, and he asked me some questions, and so I thought, hey, I'll help him out, one freelancer to another. And I gave him some information, and he used that information to hang me out to dry. And the main information that he got from me and the way he got it from me was he knew that Dave Finch was offered Batman. And then Dave Finch brought me in. He said, let's follow. We just got offered to follow Jim Lee on Batman. Hush. So I told Dave, I said, this is a lose scenario for us. I go, don't follow Jim on anything.
That's good advice.
Yeah, I said, don't. I said,
there's plenty of people you can follow, Dave Finch, and make them all look bad.
Yeah, we're working on X-Men right now, Ultimate X-Men. It's a top 5 selling book regardless. Like it goes up to number 1 sometimes, but it's always in the top 5. And it has been for years. I said, that's a steady selling book. It's a good selling book. We should stay here. Okay. So it's New York City Comic-Con. I get invited to go to lunch. So I go to lunch with Joan Hilty. Dan DiDito ends up hanging out with us as well, mainly because Mark Bagley was a tag along, and those things happen in conventions as well. It's like I'm going to lunch.
I know how that works. I've actually bought drinks with a whole bunch of people, and that's how I met CB.
So then not Dave Finch, but I mean Mark Bagley comes along. So I'm coming back from this lunch. Dave Finch was at the con too. We were killing it at this show. All three of us were sitting together with Bendis. And we were just rocking. We were the life of the convention, right? So I come back and there's CB. CB at the time was an assistant editor. I knew him. I had worked with him, but that's the extent of it. So he comes up. He goes, where were you? And I told him, went out to lunch with some DC people. And so then he said, oh. He goes, I'm glad. He goes, you got a minute? I'd like to ask you a question. He said, I really want to write Batman. And I was wondering how would be the best way to get like one of my scripts in front of an editor, blah, blah, blah. And so we get to talking similar to what he did with you. And like on a human level, like I'm just helping another freelancer out, right? So then he said, is it true that you and Dave Finch are going to do Batman? Just throws that in. Just throws that in there. So
really he's just the weasel, like a climber.
Yeah. So
he does in the music business really bad. It's just it becomes very obvious what they're doing.
Yeah, he's just getting information. And so then, once the convention was over, a couple days settled in, I get a call from CB and David Bogart, and they fire me. They fire me for wooing talent from Marvel to DC. That's the bullshit excuse that they came up with. But really, what it was
Wait,
is
did they fire you, or were you a contractor?
they fired me.
So you worked for them, like you were an employee.
Well, I mean, they fired me from the book.
That's what I'm saying. But you were a contractor. You were still like, I'm an artist or a writer or whatever, but I'm a guy on the outside as a contractor.
No, I'm a freelancer. Yeah, but
Exactly. That's my point. So really what they did was, see, that's two ways that can go. If you work for them, the corporate rule is if you actually work for me, you can't do that. But when you're every man for himself because you're actually a business owner, that's you looking out for you as a business owner. And it's just like such a shady thing to do, to fire somebody that is literally doing what they're supposed to do, which is take care of their business.
Right. I mean, there was so much shady shit, but just let me finish up because I didn't want to talk to derail it too much, but I just wanted to let you know that CB is not a nice guy. And so then what he does is they fire me and they say that I was wooing talent. What they were really trying to do is, because I talked to Dave Finch after, and I talked to Mark Bagley after, and I talked to Michael Bendis after, and David Bogart asked those guys before they fired me. Those guys knew that they were going to fire me. And so they went to Dave, they went to Mark, and they went to Bendis, and they asked them, how would you feel about this if we fired Art? And so they all gave different answers. And so basically the reason Bogart did that is because he wanted to put the fear of this into those two guys, that they could be fired. So I was just the scapegoat. I was the example of somebody being crucified to straighten those guys up from leaving.
Sacrificial lamb, so to speak.
Yeah. So that's why they did that. So, and that was all orchestrated by our buddy, CB. So I would say anybody out there, that dude's a snake, and I wouldn't trust a word that he says. If you want to get in Marvel, play the game, but don't give that guy anything because he'll use it against you. I guarantee you. He's a spy. He was just a spy for Joe Quesada and for David Bogart.
It sucks.
Yeah.
And you know what's sad is he was literally the only guy at Marvel that was nice to me. Oh man.
Yeah,
so the other guys weren't fake about like just being weirdos or jerks. Like some of them were just some weird cats. Like I'm not trying to talk trash on Marvel guys in general or something, but it's like, dude, some of the people I met from Marvel were just like, I was like, wow, okay, y'all are weird. All right, that's
yeah. So Art.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. So, do you think that CB is? Do you think that he's running the show the way that someone like Sana Amanat or Dan Buckley wants him to be running it, in terms of making sure that all the schedules are coordinated and that sort of a thing? Or do you think that he's actually having any sort of creative input over there?
I think he's a puppet. To be honest, I think he's a puppet, especially the way he gained power, by being a weasel.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he got there based on merit, let's just say. I think he's a weasel, and he played his role. And so now his corporate overlords know that he's one of them and they can trust him. So they put the puppet into power and they're just using him to do whatever they want. That's what I think personally. I don't think
I think Sana actually runs it more than people seem to understand.
Yeah,
I don't think CB's that sharp, to be honest.
Because the reason I ask is that I know Quesada has said on his live stream when he had CB on there as a guest, they were talking about how they were such good friends going back so many years. And I know that Quesada was still in power at Marvel when Alonso was fired and CB was brought in.
Yeah, I think Joe is cut out of the same cloth. I wouldn't even put it past Joe to have hired that guy to spy on freelancers, to go get freelancers' trust, go infiltrate. You're one of the guys. Because remember, one of the things early on, too, was like CB was like, I'm kind of an editor, but I'm a freelancer. Remember the early days?
Mhm.
So I'm one of you guys. So I'm going to hang out in Artist Alley. I'm an artist. I'm just trying to make it. I think that was a ruse.
It sucks.
I think those people are evil. I think just to think that way, I think they're evil. I'm a very trusting human being, and they definitely betrayed my trust, and they used me, and they humiliated me, and pretty much brought me to my knees, and jeopardized my entire family just to.
See, that's the other thing is like people don't understand. It's like when you have bills to pay and you have a family and you got a mortgage and everything, and somebody starts screwing around playing political games or just the corporate, I'm going to climb a ladder on top of somebody games. What they don't understand is like, dude, that's kind of stuff that can ruin somebody's life. And that's not a way you want to make an enemy.
Yeah, I'm a human being, to sacrifice me for a greater point to those guys, I think was absolutely insane, and just the most evil thing I could think of doing. And I will never ever trust anybody to that degree again. I learned a really valuable lesson that day, and I will never have anything good to say about Joe Quesada, David Bogart, and CB. And the reason I throw Joe in there is I had a conversation after that with Joe Quesada, and I said, this is bullshit, you know it. And he didn't actually just come out and say, I know it, but he didn't deny it either. And then the only thing he said to me goes, I'm sure if you apologize to David Bogart, you could get your job back.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yes, the right.
What? For what? Why would I apologize? I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I never did. But I always knew that Joe could fix the situation if he wanted to. But he never did.
That's that just shows that's a character issue, frankly. But that shows a real damaged kind of a person when they're saying, "Oh, you're at the top of your game. You've been doing this for a long time. We're literally looking at hiring you for Batman, and then we're just going to throw you under the bus because that works for our whatever taking advantage play." I'm sorry, man. This is the thing about the industry that like every time I would get close to it, and I mean every time I would get close to it, I would just be like, "Oh, that's so messed up." I don't. It just takes all the love out of it. And so I became a graphic designer. That's actually how I got into graphic design, because I was already doing indie comic type stuff. And then I was, what you do is you first learn how to pencil a little bit and ink a little bit and just trying to do your indie books. And you're trying to learn how to write and you're trying to do all these things. And the last thing you have to do is you have to figure out how to do titles and those kind of logos and things. And I found that I had a real knack for it and a love for it. I just found it interesting to do new projects all the time. Like that part of it was really fun, and it became my career. I've done over 10,000 logos professionally. I've been listed in Logo Lounge, which is the international guide to logo design, and I've been in it 7 times. And it's a hardback book that's like I think it's on its 10th edition. And you find yourself going like, okay, I've actually worked on billion-dollar companies where the company was their brand and logo is worth more than all of the comics industry a year combined. Yeah. And that's where I just was like, well, maybe the industry's kind of a joke and maybe I've been giving them too much credit and I should just try to do the indie stuff. And so I started kind of learning how to do some of my own stuff. And I actually met Ben Henderson, who just hired me to do some graphics. And the next thing I knew, I was involved in something called Comicsgate, and I was never going to work in the industry or whatever. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. You guys have never hired me anyway. And when I did get hired in the industry, 3 months into it, doing a whole bunch of work, waiting on a big paycheck, and a whole bunch of us were waiting on big paychecks, Marvel screwed up with their distributor deal where they were trying to start Heroes World, and it screwed up all the stores. All the stores were scared. Marvel filed for bankruptcy. I want to say they filed for bankruptcy at one point, and it was maybe the second time they had done so, and fired a bunch of executives in a single day. And when they did that, since they were in New York, the company that had hired me that was up the street was like, hell no, we're not doing comics. And they were a book publishing company that was about to dump a whole bunch of money in, and I was helping them develop a bunch of their character universe. And it was just like, nope, we're not doing it. And they were giving me a book to draw, and I was really excited, and actually helped them plot the first 2 years of books of how to intersect a bunch of their titles together. And it made me pretty much go, yeah, I'm done here. Because then 3 months later, I wasn't getting paid at all. And
I think the majority of the people that work in the comics industry are good people, and I like them. But it's always the problem with, just like with life, it only takes like one of these stories, you know, it's like one of these people to mess you up so badly that it just taints everything. You know what I mean? Like you just don't want to be involved with any of it. And I've always been a pretty independent minded person. And the only reason it really hurt at the time with Marvel is because I was always kind of a mercenary type. I always went with the highest bidder, and you know, I would jump from one project to another to get a higher page rate or to get like a better job. I mean, I always worked my ass off and stuff, but I was always like that. Like I worked for Marvel and DC the same day. Like I've always worked for multiple companies. I never put all my eggs in one basket. And the funny thing is when my daughter was born, I put all my eggs in that Marvel basket. You know what I mean? And then the first time I let my guard down, you know what I mean? Then, you know, they come in, you know, with the shank and like shiv me in the kidney or whatever, you know?
Well, to be honest, when I first started talking to you, you know, just even a little bit, I could even hear the hesitation in your voice when you spoke to me like somebody who had been burnt in the corporate world enough that they were sitting there playing things close to the vest. Like it impacted you to the point that even though you just came off as this nice guy, you also had this vibe of like, I don't trust this random dude from the interwebs, nor should you at this point. I think if there's one thing we've all proven is that we're kind of untrustworthy at like doing good business and not potentially screwing somebody or stabbing somebody in the back. It's like, it sucks though when you can tell someone's just a good person that's just kind of looked at things like, God, this sucks, you know, and they've had to then kind of, for no other way to say it, like they've basically just been damaged and gone, man, this is where humanity is. I better not be so trusting.
Yeah. And I'll, you know, I'll go out of my way for anybody. But I think they have to prove themselves worthy of it first, you know, before I just start giving blindly, like before. I just think that when people do things like this, that they're so far removed from any like reality. Like there's so many ripple effects that came out of them firing me. You know, and then you have to have that conversation with your wife, like you know, and then of course she says, well, how are we going to survive? You know what I mean? Like that becomes the discussion. And then how do you have that? You know, that's a fucked up conversation to have that, you know, to your wife, you know, and I didn't do anything wrong. Like that's the biggest thing. Like I didn't miss a deadline. I didn't, you know, I didn't break a policy. I didn't do anything. And my whole thing is, if Marvel was that paranoid about losing those guys, then divvy up some money and get those guys to sign an exclusive and be done with it. You know, like put your money where your mouth is. But instead, they want to play this stupid fucking game with people's lives. And that's the thing, too. Like, I'm just going to, anybody out there that's thinking of being like this in comics or just is like this, listen, there's not that much money in it. Have fun. No, there's very few people that are getting rich. At the end of the day, all you're going to have is the experiences of hanging out with like-minded people and drawing comic books and writing comic books. And that's really all it should be about. If I wanted to make more money, I could. I've actually done illustration. I've done advertising work, and advertising will pay 3 times the amount for the same.
Oh, it does.
The same, you know, hours that I would invest in it. I've worked for Famous Frames. I've done these type of jobs before, but to me they're soulless jobs, and I would rather, you know, tell stupid stories about superheroes fighting crime, you know.
flying blue people. It's what I always come back to. It's like it kills me that this is supposed to be political or whatever. Like, dude, I went to a comic book shop to get away from life. I wanted to enjoy some escapism, and it was a great safe haven. And they actually did make it like they could even see on my face like this kid he's in a dark place, and they just let me work in the shop part-time hours and put away comics or whatever, and then work for trade or work for a little bit of cash. And they could see that, like, just looking at my eyes, like, dude, this kid's eyes are black. He's not getting fed right, and like they kind of took care of me. And so I look back at that and just go, man, these were guys that, genuinely looked at their community and said, a lot of our, comic book diehards are not people with a lot of money or whatever. We're not in a rich neighborhood, and we're just going to be the community where we can all come together in the shop and make fun of each other for liking one book over another and talking crap on like why these books are terribly written or whatever. And DC has the better writers and Marvel has the better artists. And well, Image took their artists, but yeah, these guys won't keep a deadline. There's just all this stuff in the 90s that every other shop was talking about too. And it made it fun. And, would this character from this company beat that character from that company? And there was a community. And when I saw Comicsgate, more than anything, that's what I saw. Like, people, I think they really gave Zach an amazingly misinterpreted hard time. Because when you looked at him as just on the outside, this is what I saw from the guy. Richard Myers, just your boy, Zach. This is just a dude who was going on YouTube and talking about something that he loved. And he loved it so much that if he saw something you did good, he said, this is awesome. And if he saw something you did bad, he ripped it to shreds. And people couldn't handle being ripped to shreds because they assumed that everyone would just kiss their ass. Like, oh, I'm in comics. I matter more than you. I have a voice and you don't. And I'm special. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but you've never been hit in the face. This isn't real. And it sucks so bad when you hear a guy get back from Afghanistan or whatever, and he's like, okay, to be honest, I've met terrorists that are just better people than you. You're just the worst people. It's like, that's a really good sign that you're dealing with snakes. And what you just said about CB, what kills me about that is like, it took away one of the only good things that ever happened to me with anyone from Marvel. Like, it was that bad. Like,
that wasn't my intention. I just want to go on record. That wasn't my intention.
No, but that just it actually makes sense. That means that the only person now that I've met that I bought a drink for and was just like, he was cool to me from Marvel, which is sad to say. Well, that's not fair because Jimmy Palmiotti at the time was at Marvel. And he's actually always been pretty cool to me. And he's been a pretty real dude. But that means the only guy that's actually been cool to me from Marvel, other than maybe Frank, Frank's a pretty real guy. When Tim Bradstreet was doing stuff for the Punisher?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like when I met him, he was really nice, bought him some drinks. We're sitting there talking. Was just talking to some of the Marvel guys at the hotel across from the venue for KC Comic-Con. And then the next day I go to just kind of go around to Artist Alley and I check out some stuff, and it was a beautiful thing. He just kind of looks at me and we just kind of have the nod and kind of smile while some guy's looking through his book. And this dude is a grown ass man looking through his book, but he's a younger guy. Like, he doesn't and he's kind of dressed like a thug, like kind of just this vibe where a lot of white kids in Kansas City really try to be thugs. And he's looking through Bradstreet's stuff, and of course, every page is like a Punisher cover or something. Like, they're insane and they're worth a bunch of money.
Right.
And he's, flipping through this thing, and he looks at one that's just a killer and a book that was probably just a massive seller for Marvel. And he goes, how much is this? And he goes, oh, that one's $3. And he goes, $300? And he goes, or what do you see? Like, and he goes, 3,000. And you saw it was 3,000. And you look at him, and that's like a low price for some of his work. Right, like that was being pretty moderate. And when you saw the cover, I mean, it's one of those where you're like, oh yeah, no, you should definitely get that money. And you just saw this dude kind of look at him like he was the craziest person on the planet. Like he's like, oh, $3,000. Oh. Like, yeah, dude, you don't understand. It probably took him the better part of a month to put that thing together with all the frame references and everything that he did just to get every little teeny tiny detail right. And he was, just an amazing artist, but he was really cool. He was nice.
There's a lot of really good people in this industry. There really are. But like I said, it just doesn't take, it's like the bad apple spoils the bunch, kind of, old adage. And that's really true.
You want some good news in the industry?
What's the good news? The good news is Chrono Mechanics.
Email, because I just sent you the Doug card.
You have it there?
I just sent you the Doug card in your email, so that means that you've got all 4 of your main Chrono Mechanics cards done and sent to your email.
Are you kidding? Did you finish them up as we were talking?
That's what I was doing, dude. All those clicks in the background. I was going through around Doug. No, I already had the other 3 knocked out and sent those to you before I got on the stream. And
oh, shit, dude. I got to show this one. Holy shit. Wait. Yeah. Oh, man. You guys are going to dig this. Oh, man. Okay. Are you sitting down, Joe?
I'm sitting down.
All right, man. Okay.
He's been standing this whole time.
Standing. Well, some people stand, Who am I to judge? Okay, so let me see. I'm going to come back. All right, everybody in the chat, you're gonna get a feast for your eyes now. All right, let me hit screen share, click this, click that, click this. All right. Oh, these are the pencils. I'll show those off later, but I want to show this. Look at that. Oh my gosh, James, this is awesome.
Thanks, brother.
Holy shit.
Yeah, Doug was great. But see, here was the thing about Doug. He actually, that picture that you had of him, he had this kind of green burst of like text or something that was like, you do the kind of the burst background and you do text over the top of it. He had that up over his pants. So I had to go in and make him pants that weren't there over half of the pants. And like from a couple of different directions to whatever. It was just all these kind of like little things. So this whole time that we've been talking, I've been going in and editing every little bit, trimming him out on his own frame so that when I brought him over, he would kind of stick out. But he's so much fun. Like it was a very alive character. You know what I mean? Like the pose was great. There was nothing stiff about it. And it's a pretty accurate guitar as far as just kind of looking at a guitar. So that also helps. It just gives it some realistic basis. It was a lot of fun. His necklace is moving. Like there's, because he's got the rock star vibe and he's got the scarves. Or sometimes when I was on stage, I would use scarves on the microphone stand because the long scarves on the microphone stand, I could just move the whole stand and it didn't matter if it was a huge stage or a small stage. They were seeing huge scarves kind of moving around and it just creates a lot of really cool movement. So I enjoyed Doug doing, that's why I saved Doug for last because Doug was like, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to play in front of 1,000 people and make them do what you want them to do for an hour. Because if you don't, then you basically just don't get another gig like that. It's like you do the job or you get off the stage and don't get those gigs. And Doug, when you drew him, Art, I got to be honest with you, man. I've seen a lot of people put, like Josie and the Pussycats or whatever they put. They're supposed to be musicians or rock stars or whatever, or pop stars. It all sucks. This is alive. This is really funny to me because I look at that guy and I'm like, I know that guy. I've given that guy a pick because he didn't show up with picks that day. You know what I mean? Like it's that. Like I guarantee you, I know this person.
Yeah, he's an amalgam of a lot of different like people that I knew when I was playing music as well. And he really is for reference that people would understand. He's Steven Tyler meets Ted Nugent. So he's definitely a product of the 70s. And so all the scarves and stuff, that's like a Steven Tyler thing. Right. So I always say like he's got the voice of Steven Tyler, but the guitar and the bombastic stage presence of Ted Nugent.
That's funny. We would actually cover we would do a medley in the middle of our otherwise original, we were like a hard rock band. It was kind of somewhere between Shinedown and Alter Bridge, that kind of stuff. But we would do a medley in the middle of it if we played for bigger crowds, because then it would give them something familiar even if they didn't know our music. And it would start and end with some Ted Nugent and then have some ZZ Top and Metallica and stuff thrown in so that they just had something real familiar for a while. And then everybody would just kind of lose their minds for a bit because Sweaty Teddy, dude, the guy was amazing. He just wrote incredible music and we just had a guitarist that happened to be good enough to play it.
Are you able to zoom in a little bit, Art?
On Oot?
Yeah, on those cards.
Sure. They're kind of they're low res because they were email files, so they're not going to hold up too well. What did you want me to zoom in on?
Wait,
Well-
I don't think that's the OOT card. I think I've actually changed something on the OOT card. Because the red that's around his OOT, I think I got rid of that for these new ones.
But I like the red.
But I don't care.
I know you don't care.
Do I have to go in and do the color around their names now?
Well, that was the idea, that each one of them would have their color. Like, so Doug would be green, and Oot would be red, and Zin would be purple, and so on and so on. But what the hey? What the hey?
What the hey?
Let me see. I'm gonna go. You said you sent other ones too?
No, I sent them. Like, you've got the other 3 in another email. Like, I revised the other 3 from your revisions that you asked for.
Yeah, I'm going there now, my friend.
Yeah, those are knocked out, brother.
Ooh, I'm gonna. Oh shit! Holy crap!
Yeah.
I gotta do this one. All right.
And what they do is they alternate in the other one with the logo up above or logo below and the name up above and the name below. Like Caravaggio's card looks really cool.
Yeah, let me come back. I'm clicking all these layers. I hope I don't screw up. All right, screen share, screen share, screen share, click, and then go to Photoshop. You guys should be seeing Zin right now. Look at that. Look at that little piece of calamari.
There he is.
The kid
Delicious.
It's delicious and nutritious. Holy crap, these are so cool. James, you're the man, the myth.
The myth is right. That's funny.
Oh man, look at those tentacles. That's cool.
Yeah. I didn't draw him. What do you think? It's really funny. He's just like he's complimenting how awesome his work is.
No. What I was complimenting is the way
really
they
hard
fit into the composition. I didn't clarify because the way it wraps that N,
Right.
it's pretty cool. Those are hard, man. Tangents are real, people. Tangents are real, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, I almost redrew it, like not redrew it, but like took it and moved it to have it up over the name. And I thought, well, I don't know if I want to push that on this one or not. But do you see his tentacle right there? That's not at Zin, but it's the other front one. It could have had more shadow. If I wanted to, what I could do is, like, if you kind of look at me for a second, you could actually trace a shadow down and kind of draw a shadow down so that it would look like it's coming down outside of the card. But those are things where it's like, it's better to just make sure that you have an artist going, well, I like where we're at here or whatever, before you start getting too wacky, because otherwise you spend a lot of time for not that much difference, and people look at it like, yeah, but I still don't like the other thing about the card or whatever. All in all, I think these cards are great. But yeah, the Oot card that I just sent doesn't have the red, and I like it better personally because I think the name stands a little bit more bold now. But that's just
I think Joe likes the red better.
I don't think he said that. I don't think he said that one time.
Art knows me so well, he read my mind.
Man, come on, man.
I think Joe prefers the red. I'm just getting Joe in trouble here. Yeah, putting him right in the line of fire. Yeah.
Oh, I really like how these have come together.
Aren't they cool? Look at this.
That one actually is really cool. I was worried. I was worried about Zen, like how it's going to come out, because the other piece of artwork that I had of Zen, he was just kind of straight up and down. He's very, just, it was so wispy that I'm like, man, I got to have some other stuff. So I added a bunch of words about him because I don't like getting a bunch of trapped white space. But in this case, the clock and the space background, there's a lot going on that you and I worked together one night. Like Art and I worked on the background elements of this for hours, kind of going back and forth, making sure that the elements all made sense so that we spatially had these guys kind of floating in a cool card frame. Because you can do a card frame, or you can do the right card frame for that particular artist. And because Art is not just an artist on X-Men, he's actually, I created this thing. Like, he's the guy. It'd be like if you're talking to Todd McFarlane on Spider-Man versus talking to Todd McFarlane on Spawn. Every decision, reflects him when it's Spawn. With Spider-Man, you still got to protect the brand. You have things going on with Marvel. And so once you have the Marvel vibe down, that's fine. They can bring another artist. But if Todd then does Spawn, it's like, okay, wait a second. Now everything you do needs to reflect that one person's vision. Well, then the one nice thing about that is with Art, I literally just got him on the phone. I'm like, dude, we're going back and forth with emails. This sucks. Can we just talk? And he just stayed on the line with me, and we just, did this whole number kind of back and forth to get the background cool. Once we had the background cool, it all was easy. And so now, like, we're looking at what he's drawing right there, and it's like, that's why we have Art Thibert. This is because he can friggin' do that on a live stream,
It's weird. I'm looking at the Caravaggio, and for some reason, I wonder if it was sent as it's.
Did I send the wrong one? Maybe I sent the wrong
No. I think it's sometimes if you send what is it? CMYK. YK, like it does funky shit to the color. So
they do need to be CMYK because they are print file.
Yeah, but the other one,
then all the blacks will actually be much richer when you print them. But when you look at them on a computer, they're not RGB. So on a computer, a lot of times they look like they're kind of fuzzy gray a bit.
Well, I'm going to bring this over, and then you can see it. It looks slightly different than the other ones.
Well, maybe that's because that's not a same file type or something. I wonder if it's
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, exactly.
Was it saved as a PSD or as a JPEG?
I didn't check. So let me I'll just show it to, well, you know what? It's not putting it in the best of light, so I'll pass on that. But yeah,
hold on, let me take a look at that one and I'll send that over now. But you said that was happening on
just on the Caravaggio one. The other ones look good. And I noticed sometimes, like when I would save things and then like put them in private, like especially on Twitter, if it's not RGB and it's CMYK,
it's a disaster on a computer if you're just running it just to show it on a computer.
Yeah,
like if you want a separate copy that's an RGB, I can just save you one.
Yeah, it'll get weird. Hey, we got Death Metal Hero in the chat. Cool. He just got he got wrenched on Ethan's stream. I was so proud of the young lad. He got his wrench. How you doing, Death Metal?
And JPEG save. I'll save them all as a separate one with an RGB tag and then send them over.
Well, it's cool. I'm just going to show off the front inside cover, and then we should sort of wrap this up because I do appreciate everybody hanging, and we've been streaming for a long time. Oh, that's the weird. It did save. That's the weird color. Like if you compare it.
Oh, wait a second. That one looks like RGB. That looks like an RGB. See, look at that. That looks like your computer is showing off on Zen. Looks like it's showing off a CMYK. Just look at the background. The background is exactly the same.
Well, then I had it reversed.
It bursts the colors.
Yeah. Well, anyways, they're different. Yeah, but it's no big.
Oh, wait a second. I wonder if I was actually sending you a JPEG or if that was actually a screenshot.
It doesn't matter because I'm going to show this one off now. All right, so you guys, this is the credit page. We just got some credit pages back from Jeff Eckelberry, and this thing is pretty killer, man. So this will be the first page of the Chrono Mechanics book. So we're putting this bad boy to bed soon, and we're going to get this out to the printer this week. So we have, like, this one's been signed off on. So this is exactly how it's going to show up in the book. But then we have the back cover and the back inside that I have some notes out with Jeff, not Jeff, but Sean, and he's taking care of those probably as we speak. So, and like I said earlier on, we have some last minute kind of pages coming in from Jeff Eckelberry, the letterer. And so as soon as we get those done, we're going to, I don't know what they call it, where you put it all together in a package and then get it out to the printer. And that's what Jeff is going to do for us. And we are going to go with, is it Maxim? Marxim? Do you know the name, Joe?
Yeah, Mixum. M-I-X-A. Yeah, Mixum.
I always want to put an R in there.
It's not Nixon.
It's like Richard Nixon. It's Mixum. And yeah, so we're going to send that out. And the good news with them is they're domestic, so we don't have the 50 days of waiting time. So hopefully, if this goes off without a hitch, we will get this book to you guys sooner than later. So thanks to everybody that's backed. We still have Chrono in demand. So if you want to pick yourself up a book, there's still time. And this is what the credit page is going to look like. So this thing came out pretty cool. It's low res, but I think it holds up good enough to show off here. So look at this, man. We got some cool graphic stuff from Sean. We got some great graphic work from James Dean. Look at this. Holy shit. We are moving and we are shaking. We are doing both at the same time. So thanks to everybody in the chat for hanging. Here's the last shot of this. So thanks to everybody that's kept us company for the last couple hours. It's kind of getting dark in here, so let me put some better light on it. So yeah, this is black and white, shooting up these bots. Bots in the black and white universe they're usually not good. So
careful with your eyes, because the way that it's looking from here, just the way that the light goes, she almost looks like she's cross-eyed.
She's cross-eyed. Yeah, watch out.
Careful. Other than that, dude, honestly, this is like one of the cooler things I've seen from black and white. I don't think anybody looking at this is going, wow, I don't like it. Like everybody looking at this is like, I can't believe I'm watching this happen. This is great art.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, so this will be the print and the trading cards, possibly a variant cover. Depends on how the campaign goes. So it's going to be for the Second Chance campaign, and we were going to launch it for the end of this month, but things being what they are, I want to make sure that the Chrono Mechanics book gets to the printer before we launch the black and white Second Chance campaign. So it'll probably be the first week of June when we'll go live with this, and this will be finished within. I'm thinking tonight I'll have it done, and then I'll get it out to Kyle Ritter, who's going to throw some terrific colors on there, and we'll have a bitchin'. Listen to this. A bitchin' piece of artwork for you guys. I got my mouth washed out with soap once in front of my mom. I said bitchin', and she squirted dish soap right down my throat.
So be honest, when you say that word, you get this like weird twinge of like you're kind of like looking over your shoulder a little bit.
Exactly. I'm looking for the soap, the Dawn soap dispenser to just shoot that stuff. I'll tell you one thing, like a bar of soap is pretty bad because I've had that shoved down my throat too. And the reason a bar of soap is bad because it gets stuck in your teeth. So you taste it later for hours. But liquid soap, it gets everywhere, man. Yeah. Oh, this is a little aside. I wanted to chime in yesterday on Ethan's stream, and they were talking about being paddled, as kids, by like soup spoons and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And wire hangers. I think Cecil said a wire hanger. That's pretty brutal. And then there's a belt, get Daddy's belt. So I wanted to throw it out to, I don't know if you guys have ever had corporal punishment from a parent or
we got the crap beaten out of us at home. No, we were belted, and like my dad, that was kind of a thing because he grew up, just at a time where it's like that. The belt was even being nice to your kids. If all you were doing is belting them, you weren't switching them. And so he thought he was being, like nicer to his kids looking back than what he had grown up with in the Depression, where they were selling off their kids if they couldn't afford to feed them. And it's like, they're like, oh, they were literally selling kids because they're like, oh, I can't afford to feed them, so let's just sell these two.
God, remember, you never have anybody reminisce about, remember that time when you could buy a kid?
When you could buy children to do your farm work for you? Yeah, because they would literally sell off their kids. Like, oh, do farmers need farm hands or whatever? Well, here's some more kids for extra slave labor. Like, this was a thing that went on as a normal thing in the Depression because food wasn't just scarce. Everything was scarce. My dad said once, he goes, you don't understand. When we say that we had nothing, what we actually mean is that we had nothing. Like we owned nothing. Like if you had a pair of shoes that even remotely fit you, you were considered pretty well off. I was like, okay, that's a different place. All right.
Okay,
go ahead and complain about my central heat and air. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Have you ever been whacked by an adult or a teacher? Because I've been whacked by both.
Well, I had the living. So like, no, I mean, it's like I
I was in a lot of fights growing up with other kids or whatever, but like at home, I would get belted constantly, and I got paddled at school once by a great big redneck guy that was just like, well, you were out of line with what you said to your teacher, and I have to paddle you, even though he knew I was right. And then I went home, and then I got it from my mom, and then my dad got home, and then he gave it to me too. And I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to sit down. But it was, that's just how things were. And it was like 1980, whatever. And I remember in third grade, it was probably, I think it was, that was in fourth grade. In third grade, it was the Challenger. Was that 84? The Challenger went down? Because we were watching it in school.
86.
86. So it was 87. Yeah, it was not a good time. It was not a good time for James.
And how about you, Joe? Were you ever whacked as a child?
Oh yeah. Many times.
When your dad would hit you, like my dad had these knuckles where he would just like knuckle you on the side of the head if you were out of line, just dink, and all you would see is a white light, just like boom.
Yeah.
Joe to tell a story, because I got a story real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. But so, Joe, what is the most unusual thing you were ever hit with from your parents?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm not sure about most unusual. I know that once in a while it was just whatever happened to be nearby. But yeah, wooden spoons were very common in my house.
Oh.
Yeah. I've been whacked with wooden spoons. I've had them broken across my Heineken.
Yep, same here.
The funny thing is, well, not funny, but I always thought my dad was pretty cool, because my dad never hit out of anger. So it was more like there was a mental torment that went with it. So it would be always go to my room, and then he'd let you just seep in it, right? You just like stew in like, what did I do? What did I do? And then he'd come in and he'd go, did you think about what you did? How do you feel about it? And then we talk a little bit, and then he'd just go, okay, whack, just a quick snap, right?
Oh.
And that would be it. I mean, he usually used his hand, but I'll tell you one thing about women, and especially my mom. My mom was like you said, Joe, whatever was available, and it was in the heat of the moment.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't care. They've got like a snap switch to their brains where it's like dink.
Yeah, and I just remember once my mom, like, I don't know what it was, but she flipped out. And so, Hot Wheel tracks, like every kid in the 70s,
Yep.
probably early 80s had like Hot Wheel tracks, right? So I had my Hot Wheel tracks set up, right? So she grabs one of them. You just bust up my whole, how you spend all day like putting your Hot Wheel track together. She broke it up. She grabbed it. It still had one of those purple tongues. Remember, they were orange tracks and they had the little purple tongue that would kind of connect them together. And then she just started whacking me with the freaking Hot Wheel track. And I'll tell you, it hurt like nobody's business. And I thought it was so funny. It was just weird. It's like sometimes things just strike you as funny. And I laughed the first time she whacked me.
Oh, no.
And then she doubled down and she just started like, oh my God. She just started whacking me over and over again. So I started running, right? And there's one thing, as a kid, you got to keep it in the house, right? You never run out. You never scream for help.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you never do those things.
Yep.
So I'm just running around the house like a chicken with my head cut off while she's following me, like whacking me with this Hot Wheel track. And I'm just laughing maniacally at my mom because I couldn't stop laughing. And all she could think was, I need to get respect, right? So she just doubling down and just hit me over and over again with this Hot Wheel track. And I'll never forget it. It's one of those, like, it's just funny. You know what I mean? Like there's moments where you just realize that your parents are human and that your mom was just at her wit's end and she couldn't handle it anymore. And it probably wasn't even about what I did at the moment. It was just like she just needed to vent, right? And man, did I give her a venting, person to like just whack. So when Ethan was talking about this last night, I was like, I so wanted to be on the chat because I wanted to tell that story. So that's my story of corporal punishment. I got a super chat. Cool. Thank you very much. Please do it as a poster with this masterpiece. Yes, we will do this. It's not just going to be a poster, but we're going to do it as an oversized poster. So it'll be bigger than 11 by 17. So one of the things we're doing with Chrono, the posters, like the Doug World Tour poster and the Time to Panic poster, those are bigger than 11 by 17. So this black and white one's going to be done the same. And I might do it as a remark. I'm playing with format, but if I can do a cool format, like leave enough space, because I don't like when they draw over the artwork, but if I can design it where I can leave a space on the bottom, then I'll do remarks as well, because those are fun to do, and I know they're highly collectible. Man, this was a blast. So I want to first thank Joe for coming in, and James, man, that was very generous of you, man. James went through the Hack Shack command post. She went through my wife on this one. So did you talk to her on the phone?
Yeah. I actually just called her and I was like, so I know Art's about to start a stream. If you can, I'm going to show him the new stuff. I want to make sure that he gets to see it while he's on the stream. And dude, we're 3.5 hours in, and to be honest, it's actually one of the fastest live streams I can remember of a 3-hour stream. This is 3.5 hours in, and it is not slow. And that's a really good sign that you got people that are actually talking about really cool stuff. You guys talked about movies that people are like, yeah, dude, these movies matter to us. We're real comic book fans, or we're Star Wars fans. Like, we're people that are real fans. But to show somebody actually drawing we were watching a guy who was a Marvel and DC artist, like in the 90s. I think I speak for a lot of people that will see this and go, that's Art Thibert. Like, I bought his Cable #1. It's like a whole bunch of us were buying books that you did. And so to actually get to see you do it live is really cool. But to work on the project with you has actually been a lot of fun for me, just because I grew up on your work, and you were inking some of my absolute favorite artists, to the point that even now you'll pull out stuff where I'm like, oh, he still has a page with him and Will Portacio. This is bullcrap. It's just like I want that. And I think a lot of us, we get to really be fans again when we listen to you guys, because you guys are talking from the standpoint of what fans actually care about. It's not the drama to be drama. It's more like, this happened to me back in the day and it was bullcrap. Or we watched this movie. This movie sucked. I think that's what we want. We just want to feel like there's some camaraderie and kind of a safe place. And if that happens to be a clubhouse where we just go, like, what was Calvin and Hobbes, where they would have the clubhouse and he would have the little no girls sign there from the girl in the neighborhood or whatever. And I think we just kind of want that. We want to know.
I'll show you how old I am, James Dean. The Little Rascals, the He-Man Woman Haters Club.
Oh wow!
Remember when they had the HQ, they had the little headquarters, and they had their the He-Man Woman Haters Club.
See that? Yeah. I think that might have been before my time, because when I was buying He-Man, or when I was getting He-Man given to me as a kid, my family was very poor, so everything we had were hand-me-downs. It was just like, oh, they went to a garage sale and got it. So I've never heard of that.
Well, this predates me too. This predates me, man. I'm old, but I'm not that old. And I know that Sheldon Martin thinks I was born in 1957, but I got news for you, Sheldon. That is not true. But I did watch Little Rascals on reruns and stuff like that. I also know who the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers are too, but that also predates me.
You got another super chat.
Remember when we all got where they just VCRs coming out? One of the first things that you could do to give your kids was to give them stuff that you thought was safe as a parent. So they would give you Three Stooges stuff where it's the worst thing you could teach your children, thinking like, oh, this will be totally safe. So they'd get you these old like rehashed combo packs of Three Stooges, videos, and they'd put them on like video cassettes. And you would watch this stuff as children going, I can't believe my parents are letting me see this. These people are terrible. This is great.
Well, that and the first thing you do after you watch them is you hang out with your friends and you start hitting each other like the Three Stooges. Yep. You start seeing if you could actually block the eye jab.
Can I block the eye poke?
Can I block the eye jab? Yeah, you can, if it's perfect timing. And they're coming right in at the perfect angle. But how many kids have lost an eye because of the Stooges? Come on, let's be honest here.
Yes, this has been a lot of fun. Art, this has been a great stream, and the work looks really killer. Joe, it was an honor. You guys are great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was good to talk to you. And Art, before you sign off, you got another super chat.
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, you're monetized. Cool. Thank you for the good stream. You are welcome, Blue Samurai Zero, and thank you
he's
so
good
much.
people. Blue Samurai's good people.
I think everybody in Comicsgate is good people. You know, even the people that sort of get a bad rap, I like. You know, like for different reasons. Yeah. So it's all good, man. And thanks again, and everybody have a great Memorial Day. Spend some time with your family. Do some barbecuing. I'm gonna order a pizza right now for me and my lady, and we're gonna hang out and probably watch some more Persons of Interest.
Nice.
Tonight.
By the way, thanks for the heads up on that, because I wouldn't have put that together, and now it makes me want to watch the show.
Oh, watch it. I don't know. I only really have scrutinized the first 2 seasons.
Is it on Netflix?
No, I actually bought the Blu-rays when they came out, and I'm glad I did, because there's not many things that are good right now on TV. So I'm kind of going through my old Blu-ray collection going, you know what? This was pretty good. The other one was, what was that one show? Pamela, do you know the one show that we liked too? He was an ex-spy, and then he had the girlfriend, and then that guy from Bruce Campbell was in it.
Oh no, that was great. That was
Burn Notice.
Yeah, Burn Notice. His eyes are a little weird and they're like a little thin and squinty, but he's a good actor. He's funny. It even gave the writing was good, so it would have good tips about little spy extras or whatever, like how to break a lock and how to freeze stuff over. Just little things that were like, that actually makes some sense. So the writers did some research when they wrote the part, but he was a good actor. And,
yeah, he was kind of like an ex-spy MacGyver, kind of like he had all the best of those kind of cool thriller action adventure TV shows, and just the characters were so cool, like his ballistic girlfriend and Bruce Campbell, that he was the guy that could facilitate anything. You know what I mean? He could make anything happen. It was a good show too. So that's probably what we're going to start with.
His crazy mother.
She was
right. Who was it? Who was it?
Was it?
The actress playing the mom was good. The actress playing Fiona was good. It was pretty solid.
Oh, James knows the characters' names too.
No, I watched it a bunch. I can't remember the Burn Notice. I actually can't remember their characters' names, but I remember Fiona just because that name kind of stuck out.
That was the girlfriend.
Yeah, she was crazy as a bedbug, man. She was loopy.
She was actually a really good actress in Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. I don't know if you ever saw that, but it was a dark movie that was kind of that, not Pulp Fiction vibe, but kind of along that lines of like anybody in the chat who's ever seen that. Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. Really strong movie with Andy Garcia, and Christopher Walken was in it. It's messed up. Steve Buscemi's in it.
Yeah, and Andy Garcia is one of those underrated actors as far as I'm concerned, man. If you look at a lot of the movies that I really like, you go, oh, Andy Garcia was in that. That's cool. I love The Untouchables, and his role in The Untouchables was just awesome. He was just like one of those guys that he was completely functional. Usually Hollywood doesn't like those characters. They like, oh, this guy is dysfunctional or whatever. That guy was completely functional. Do you remember that shot where, what was it? Elliot Ness goes to him. He goes, you got the shot? Because he's holding wasn't he holding the baby carriage or whatever? And he's on the stairs. It's like the climax of the movie. They're in the train station. And then he goes, you got the shot? He goes, I got the shot. And he goes, take it or whatever. And it's like, fuck, man, that was brilliant. It was so cool, man.
Yeah, that's a really good movie I would suggest anybody watching, because if they can find it, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead is for the people that were fans of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and True Romance, where there was some mob stuff going on with it, and it was just kind of a cool, dark story of what happens. But it's one of those that's definitely not for kids in the content and in the speech and whatever. And you just watch it and you're just like, these writers, this was back when Hollywood could actually write a movie and were allowed to. Before Tarantino was the only guy left standing that was still doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to do one thing before we leave. Pamela just came in and gave me this notice. This is so cool. You guys are the frickety frackety best. You should be seeing the Chrono site right now. All right, I'm going to hit refresh. So we're at 199. So 43,199. Let me hit refresh. Holy shit. Yes, thank you guys so much. I like seeing the threes together. 43,306. So we got a couple backers during this live stream. So thank you guys.
Right
Very
on.
cool. Oh, hey, Art. One more thing. You know that picture that I did of black and white?
Yes.
Okay, so I did a sketch of black and white, and I did it for Art because he was having me do some stuff anyway, and because a lot of my fans for Conflict, they waited forever, and I'm still trying to work on the book. Like, I'm still learning how to color. I'm learning how to do all these things I was hoping I was going to be able to hire people to do, and just didn't have the money to do it. And so they were so nice about it that okay, Mighty Joe Young said, check out Stand Up Guys with Pacino, Walken, and Arkin. Ooh, nice.
Alan Arkin's one of my favorite too. That guy's underrated. That guy's
super underrated.
But go ahead, James.
Anyway, I wanted to give that away on the stream. So I thought, like, I'll give the original sketch of it away. Like, you can show it. But I did a bunch of little extra stuff to it. But the actual original sketch of it, I thought I would maybe give it away on the stream if you had any backers, which you just did.
Well, let's do it for a future. Let's not even tease. We'll tease it right now, and then we'll do it in a future episode. That'll be cool, man.
Very cool. This is great, guys.
And also, James Dean and I are going to be working with each other. I'm going to ink something up, so that's kind of one of the payment things for all the graphic stuff. So I can't wait to throw some ink over your pencils, James. It'll be fun.
I appreciate it. And by the way, the reason why I did that was so that I would have something of Conflict that I could give away. So that thing that Art will ink for me will actually be a giveaway to one of my backers because they were so patient. But what I want to do is I want to actually include that as a print in with the book itself to the guys that bought physical copies. People were great. You know, they were very patient with it. And then I got sick at the beginning of the year. Like, I think I got COVID-19 at the beginning of the year because I was on the road in January, very beginning of January. We're talking like over the new year. And I was in a rental car for business going across country. And so I actually think the Squish show said Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead is definitely awesome. Absolutely right. The Squish show.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out. All right. Well, I'm sorry you got sick. That's horrible. But
no, it sucks, but it took me months to get over it. And I'm like, dude, this stuff is serious. Like, I understand why people are taking that serious because it wasn't like anything I'd ever felt. And I literally felt like I was dying. Like, I had organs feeling like they were numb inside and horrible pain. And I'm like, honey, I don't know what's going on. Like, she actually told me after about a week and a half after I got better, but she was sure that I was getting better. She finally said, I wrote you off. I didn't know how to tell the kids. It was horrible. You know, she's like, I didn't know how to tell the kids you weren't going to get better. You know, this was really bad. So this is a serious thing. Like, people are getting this stuff and, you know, people are dying from it. Also, a lot of people are getting it and not having any effect at all. And at some point, our country kind of does have to get back to us doing what we're doing right now, where we're just going, okay, things are horrible, things happen. But guess what? They're horrible for 1% of the people? No, half of 1% of people. And that's still a crap ton of people, but we didn't do it. We're just faced with it. We're dealing with it. It's the best you can do. It's like a flood. If you live in California and you have an earthquake, you don't then go, well, now let's close all the businesses. You go, let's find a way to build. Let's build it back up. And unfortunately, I think that's where we're at. So this has been a real honor. Art, it's a pleasure to work with you on some stuff. But to the Comicsgate people that are listening, thank you for being so kind and being so patient. So I'm going to send you a bunch of extra stuff, including, and because we're on this, I will make one last announcement, because my campaign is over anyway, and otherwise they wouldn't be hearing it. I'm actually working with an artist and a writer now that we're putting a book on Indiegogo that didn't look like it was going to raise the money they needed to. And it looks like I'm going to be able to buy the rights to send a digital copy to all of my backers additionally on top of mine.
Well, very cool. Very cool, my friend. So, yes, everybody have a wonderful Memorial Day. And thanks to all the people that paid for our freedom. We appreciate it. I mean, I love my freedom. I love America. I love everything that we have right now. So I really, really do appreciate all the sacrifice. So thanks to everybody. And thanks to all the people that are still fighting for us and sacrificing. Take care. Enjoy your day. And we'll see you soon.